Hello and welcome back to Lorehammer. I'm your host tonight, Mark, and joining me on this episode into Eldar lore is Christian. Hey.
You thought you got rid of me, but I came back.
Just like those bad yeast infections, man. Just miserable to
you've
be
had
around.
Many. Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm glad you're here. Despite what everyone on the internet says about you, I actually kind of like you. Best kept secret out there, though.
Everyone.
Everyone.
He's done a poll. Okay.
Yeah, I swear, man, like 90% of the emails and messages I get, they're like, oh, I love reading about Tao philosophy and fuck Christian. And also, have you heard of this cool theory? Every time, man.
Yeah, I know. I see them too.
We also got, it hurts. We also got joining us tonight is Jordan. Hey.
Hey, guys. You'll just have to excuse me. I've been trying to recover from a pretty rough cold, so I might be a little quiet tonight, but I'll try my best.
Yeah, you sound like a different person. So do you want to do like some type of identity swap, pretend you're somebody else tonight, or you're happy with your life?
I mean, is there an Eldar that sounds kind of like me?
Oh yes, Pliu Lao is his name, so we'll refer to you as that.
That's who I am, man.
Oh yeah. Jordan likes twisting those nipples. I know. He's a Dark Elder for sure. Yeah, well, tonight we got episode 139. We got Eldar Mythology. This is going to be a very interesting episode, very speculative, very much mythological. It's going to be cool to kind of go through what the Eldar actually kind of believe their ancient roots of morality come from, their ancient roots of all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a fun episode. Before we get to it, we'll just do some quick housekeeping as we always do. The Discord. Come on, come join. Come on, come into the Discord. I don't bite. Come join me in there. It's a lot of fun. I've been thinking about, we're getting pretty close to the spot where we can launch up monthly contests again with a little prize support. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Keep joining that Patreon and we'll get a little closer to that. But we're getting really close. So come join the Discord. Keep your eye out, and we're going to be doing some contests soon.
You can also be there when Mark launches his first crypto scam.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, if the Hawk Tua girl can do it, why can't Lorehammer have a crypto coin?
A Lorehammer coin, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to rug pull you guys. We would never.
No, I didn't already flee the country to avoid legal problems.
Okay, there's this video you should go watch on YouTube. It's like a 13-year-old kid.
Yes, I've seen it.
I have not.
Some guys on Reddit or something taught him how to start his own crypto. And he started it and like literally was live streaming himself as the crypto coin like just started going up and up and up. And then he like immediately rug pulled everyone live on TV.
I think he made like 20 or 30 grand.
Yeah,
yeah, like it was like over like minutes. Like it was all live right there. You could see what he's doing. Like,
okay, so maybe we need to get into some Lorehammer crypto then if it's that easy. Okay.
Yeah. Well, if you're not into getting scammed, you can also always join the Patreon and join the Imperial Tithe and help support the show. You get the ad-free version for $2.50 or a video version for $5. So better than getting crypto scammed. So join us there. Get something for your money.
I'll let you guys in on a secret too. Like you can donate and you don't even have to listen to the show. You can just set it and forget about it. And
you can do that.
You can do that. Yes.
You can get nothing of value and still donate.
Yeah.
But that's up to you. You're doing that. You choose not to take the value from your investments.
Indeed. And if you are a Patreon or a patron, you can join us on the live stream. We do live streams every time we record an episode. Usually that's Wednesday nights and Friday nights.
And
you'll have to, and Tuesday, sorry. And you can figure out your time zone for when that works, but you can also figure out the exact time because we send the link on the Discord. But yeah, jump in and join us. You can also, if you're a patron, you can join the chat room during the show and interact with us. We like to interact with the comments while we're recording and going through the content. And then at the end of the episode, we do call-ins, and you guys can give your live, unfiltered opinions that will probably get Christian banned from working for the government ever again. So.
Yep.
I got
As
banned
is
once
tradition.
already. I don't want a second round of getting banned.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's dive into some Eldar mythology, some Eldar mythos. It's been pretty fun reading this. I read this Eldar mythology a long time ago and just remembered it being so intricate and everything's playing against each other. It very much is just like you can close your eyes and swap out some characters for some Greek gods, and then bingo bango, you know your Eldar mythology.
Yeah, funny story is that's literally what GW did, is they just ripped off a bunch of world mythology. So
yeah, I picked up on it.
I mean, come on. Don't they do
you
that?
would never do that. History,
It's fine.
mythology, it's all fair game.
Yeah, like, because then I rip off them, and then the cycle continues, and then, you know, it's just a never-ending gift of giving from lore.
Some say GW was the first AI.
Just regurgitating shit. That's nice. I like that. Yeah, so let's get into this episode. We have a lot about the Eldar gods. We're going to have a little bit about the Rhana Dandra, which is like the Eldar end times, and a little bit in between, even all that kind of stuff. So let's start with the myth cycles of the Eldari. A tapestry of ancient legends and timeless stories weave together the fractured remnants of a once great race. These tales steeped in mystery and reverence, form a spiritual and cultural foundation for the Eldari, binding them through a shared memory and offering a window into the echoes of their ancient past. Central to these cycles is the pantheon of the Eldari deities. Those celestial drama once guided their people, yet the cataclysmic fall of the Eldari shattered this divine assembly. Only three gods endured the apocalyptic birth of Slaanesh, the chaos gods who devour Eldari's souls with insatiable hunger. Among these survivors are Cegorach, the enigmatic laughing god, Isha, the mother of life, long imprisoned by Nurgle, and Calimentary Cain, the bloody-handed god, fragmented and yet fiercely present in the shards of his being. The rest of their pantheon fell into oblivion, consumed by she who thirsts. From the ashes of the cosmic tragedy arises a new and enigmatic entity, Ynnead, born not of old myths, but of collective souls of the Asuryani dead. Ynnead gestates within the infinity circuits of all craft worlds, a silent force of potential rebirth. Whispers of this nascent god grew to a crescendo during the Battle of Port Demnesis in the twilight of the 41st millennium, when Ynnead partially awokened, heralding a new destiny for the Eldari. This awakening gave the rise to Ynnari, a kindred unlike any other, bearing the hope of uniting their fractured race against the encroaching shadows of their doom. Thus, the myth cycles of the Eldari are not mere stories, but an enduring testament to the resilience of people bound by destiny, haunted by loss, and striving for renewal amidst the endless stars. And here's a nice little quote. When the Eldar first rose from the bosom of the ground, nourished by the tears of Isha, the gods came to them, each offering them a gift. Asuryani, Lord of Lords, gave the Eldar wisdom, and they would know themselves. Isha gave the Eldar love, that they would know one another. Vol gave the Eldar artifice, and they would make their dreams a reality. Lilith gave the Eldar joy, that they would know happiness. Kurnous gave the Eldar desire, that they would know prosperity. Murray-Haig gave the Eldar foresight, that they would know their place in the world. What a gift to know your place in the world. And Cain gained the Eldar anger, that they would protect what the gods have given them. And that is from an anonymous storyteller of the Eldar race.
An anon storyteller, as you have in the notes. So they obviously browsed 4chan.
Yeah.
Here first.
Yeah, so we named a couple of the gods already. There are there are a couple more than the ones we named, but it is cool how each one of these already we're starting to see little aspects of who they are and why they exist and what relationship they have to the Eldar. And then we also have a couple other gods that are coming up into existence, like Ynnead, born in the 41st millennium, starting to kind of gestate and coalesce into a form, and has finally kind of taken some type of form that can communicate and even has an avatar available. So there's a couple different time scopes when we're talking about Eldar mythology. I kind of break it down into 3 main kind of times, maybe 4 if you're really getting fucking finicky with it. But the first is like pre-Eldar, like we're talking like 60 million years ago type Eldar lore. And then it jumps forward a whole lot of ways, and we get to the birth of Slaanesh, and that's kind of the next big kind of Eldar mythos point, which happened 10,000 years ago, which is still a long-ass time, even for an Eldar. And then you jump one last time to kind of the birth of Ynnead, and, dare I say, the Rhana Dandra, or whatever they call their end times. We're kind of getting into that a little bit too. So that's kind of how I've broken up the mythos of the Eldar and the timelines.
Yeah, that's a decent way to break it up. I would call them like eras. Like eras don't necessarily have to be equal periods of time, but it's a period of time, right? So yeah, that's not a bad way to look at their kind of basic breakdown. For sure. All right. The genesis of the Eldari. In the ancient and sacred myths of the Eldari, their origin is traced to the divine union of Isha, the life-giving goddess of fertility and the harvest, and Kurnous, the eternal god of the hunt. These 2 celestial beings, intertwined in purpose and power, are said to have bestowed their essence upon the Eldari, making them as their chosen children. That's a very poetic way of saying they banged.
Yeah, like Kurnous is the Eldar god of desire, and desired Isha. Perfect. And
intertwined in purpose and power. I'm going to intertwine with you, all right? Yeah.
Oh God. Sorry. How do Eldar reproduce? How do they do it? What's the mechanics?
Thoughts and feelings.
They're sapiosexuals.
I don't like that.
They only like you for your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know whose Eldar penis is going to open up to accept
and
the
receive
other one?
the other one?
Yeah. How do we know? We'll get to it, I'm sure. We'll learn more about the birth of them, but carry on.
In those primordial days, the realms of the material and the immaterial were as one, a seamless expanse where gods and mortals walked side by side. There were no veils to separate the divine from the earthly, no barriers to confine the ethereal to the shadows of the immaterium. The deities themselves graced the world of the Eldari, guiding their fledgling race with wisdom and might. Under their divine tutelage, the Eldari flourished in an age of unparalleled harmony and abundance. It was a golden epoch, a time when the gods' presence was a constant blessing, their hands shaping the destiny of their people. These sacred teachings of their shared past endure, a reminder of an era when divinity and mortal kind were one, and the Eldari lived as luminous inheritors of a paradise forged by their creators. And then we'll jump into the Eldar pantheon. Actually, before we do that, I just want to say it's cool. Like, this is a time, and so here's the thing with Eldar mythology is like we don't know how real it is, or if it's used to describe something that was real, or if it's not even real at all. Now that's the least likely one, because we see like avatars of Cain, we see fragments of like their mythology actually being true, but like, are these poetic descriptions of things, or were these like real events, right? Did the Eldar really walk side by side with their gods? Is that like a poetic way of saying like, they weren't tainted by some kind of sin or mortality or something, right?
Yeah.
Or chaos.
Like we're jumping 60 million years back in the past, so it's all very clouded, and we don't, like you said, we don't necessarily know the truth of any of this. And even like when they talk about them being gods, like what kind of gods are these? Some people think that maybe these gods were just the very first Eldar themselves, and they weren't gods at all. But over, the thousands of years, the mythos is built up where they turned a regular Eldari, an insightful Eldari into a god. Other times, people might think that these gods might have been the old ones trying to lead the Eldar in these first kind of moments of their kind of rise to power. And that would make sense too. The Eldar and the old ones have a very special relationship. And let's say even maybe they're not the old ones, but then what did the old ones think of these Eldar gods?
Yeah, like what were they? And again, this is a time before the Immaterium was chaotic, right? So like if they are beings of the Immaterium that predate the chaos gods, maybe like we don't know, which is cool. I like that.
Yeah. We get into it a little bit later too, like with Isha and what happens to her. But they definitely have some type of ability to be in the warp for long periods of time. And like, yeah, you're kind of saying the warp wasn't tainted by chaos as much in the birth of the chaos gods way back then. And it's almost like these gods could be like good manifestations. We talk a lot about how most of the warp manifestations are like these evil creatures and stuff. But that's just like over the time, all the emotions and stuff really gets riled up. But in a time of peace and calm of the warp, yeah, maybe they were able to create some type of good god.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that symbolism of like walking side by side with their gods and like, the ethereal and the real were not separate. Again, does that mean that like the warp can flow between reality in and out without it being a bad thing, right? Back then. And now, after the events of chaos, tainting it and separating it and making it like, yeah. Point is, we don't know. But I just wanted,
all that to say,
we don't know. But yeah, so just as people listen to this, like I just want them to picture any number of ways of what we're describing, taking it literally, taking it figuratively and poetic, or taking it to mean like something else. Like, like the swords of Vol, like they're not literal swords, they're these big battle stations, right? Like, are they stand-ins or allegories for something else that they're trying to communicate through their myths, or all of the above? We don't know. So let's get into the pantheon. Azurian.
Maybe one more quick thought.
Yeah, go for it.
We don't know, and the Eldar in universe, I don't think know either. So that's an important kind of point as well. Like no one knows. This isn't just a meta not knowing.
Or it is a meta not knowing because no one knows.
Or yeah.
All right. Let's get into the pantheon. The Azurian. Azurian. Azurian, the Phoenix King, is a chief deity of the Eldari pantheon, embodying wisdom, protection, and authority. Known as the ruler of the gods, Azurian is a figure of regal majesty and justice, his flame representing eternal balance and order. He erected the barrier that separated gods and mortals, an act born of his desire to protect the Eldari from the chaos of the Immaterium, but one that also distanced the deities from their creations. Azurian is revered as a figure of foresight and governance, the guiding hand that once kept the pantheon united. So you see right there, like, it's implied, if you think of it the one way, that Azurian separated the Immaterium from reality. They're saying to protect their children. So it could have been these entities, and again, I don't know if we're talking about old ones or we're talking about something else, that actually are the ones that are responsible for splitting the universe. If you read it and interpret it a certain way, right?
Sure.
And that's cool because it also plays into. Do you talk at all about aspects and stuff like aspect warriors?
Not a whole lot. I think they get mentioned once or twice, especially in the end times in the Rhana Dandra. They come up a lot, Phoenix Lords and stuff, but they're not the focus for sure.
Okay. I was just going to mention like that protection kind of attribute of Azurian, the god, is also reflected in the defenders, like the aspect warriors who are defending the craft world, right? That same concept of defense is like played through this god.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just doing these gods, and I just wrote a quick paragraph to kind of give you an idea of all of them before we get into the mythos and lay it all out, just so when we say the names, you kind of have it one paragraph. And then we're going to jump back to them and give a lot more detail once we know kind of the mythos laid out. So,
yeah, for sure. Isha. Isha, the goddess of fertility, life, and the harvest, is the nurturing heart of the Eldari pantheon. She is the mother of the Eldari race, a tender and compassionate figure who taught them the ways of agriculture and healing. Even after her captivity by Nurgle, her sorrowful whispers guide her children, for legends holds that that her tears reach them through the winds of the Materium. Isha is a symbol of resilience and hope, her maternal presence a constant reminder of life's endurance amid suffering. Kurnous. Kurnous is the god of the hunt and the wild. He is a primal and dynamic deity representing freedom, nature, and the pursuit of destiny. Often depicted as a powerful hunter adorned with antlers, he's guided the Eldari in understanding the natural world and mastering the skills of the chase. As the consort of Isha and father of the Eldari, Kurnous embodies the untamed spirit of adventure and instinct to survive. His lessons remind the Eldari of their place as both protectors and predators within the cosmic order.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know how common this is in other kind of pantheons, but typically, like I'd go to the Greek pantheon, and you got Zeus, who's kind of like the birth giver of most of the people. In this, Kurnous, who's kind of like the third main guy, is kind of the father of the Eldari, where Surion is not. Even though if Surion is the leader, the king of all of them and all that, just kind of an interesting little thing where.
Yes and no. So I was gonna draw in like the real world religious and mythological attributions. I believe in Greek mythology, humans were created by what's his name? The Titan, Prometheus.
Okay.
And in fact, in a lot of because Zeus even was also created. He was created by the Titan. The Titans were like the actual gods before they were dethroned.
Sure.
But something you're touching on there is like a repeated theme, not just through Greek mythology. So like GW really did. They tapped on like a lot of Eastern religion, like Middle Eastern religion, and like yes, the typical Greek and stuff. But Azurian kind of like embodies, the name comes from like Vedic, like Hindu religion. I'm trying to remember all this and keep it all straight. I'm not a religious scholar, so if I do mess this up, if anyone's listening, feel free to yell at your listening podcast.
Yeah, this
player
is what the live chat's for, so they can yell at you in
now's
real
the
time.
Yeah. But yeah, Azurian, at least like some of his attributes come from like Hindu Vedic mythology, but also that idea of like, yes, Mark, you're saying like that father god, king of the gods, like Zeus is like that. Man, people are gonna throw rocks at me. Odin and Egypt, Osiris, all kind of fill like that role.
So there is also like another theory about like the sort of origins of a lot of these gods, and that they were very much more like geologically or geographically based. So like and that like their place hierarchy in the pantheon was more a post hoc construction. So like often, you'd have like Athena or something in a city, and she would be the goddess of a city, and each of these like city states would have their own god, and then eventually when they became the part of Greater Greece or the Greater Roman Empire, then they started incorporating those gods into the pantheon. And the reason why perhaps like Zeus gets the chief spot, or like El in Sumerian gets the chief spot, is because that's like where the seat of the empire was. So they had to make the god that was locally based there sort of the chief god. And now this is just a theory that some anthropologists have come up with as to like why these pantheons came about. It was kind of actually to unite a lot of disparate people under, so that they didn't have to like give up their god, you know. And
Man,
so
Interesting.
I've heard that from Mesopotamian religions. I'm a little bit skeptical about being in the Greek.
No, it's definitely, they've definitely taught. This is where I learned about it, was with the Greek pantheon, but it's also with Mesopotamian as well.
Yeah, like for sure it happened in Mesopotamia, like that you can tell, because even cities are named after gods, right? And like they don't have even any interaction with other religions until they conquer that city, and suddenly that god is adopted into the new religion. Like typically as subservient. But in Greece, I was just gonna say, like, we have Greek texts that talk about, you know, the Titanomachy and stuff, that they actually define some of these, maybe not exactly hierarchies. And again, like you said, it's a working theory, so maybe even that version, because these Greek myths are old, like they're older than written text, right? Like when we get,
that's the problem. Yeah.
Like by the time we get
trace
written
their
text, these stories
origins.
have been, and these gods have been around for longer. They're already ancient entities, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know, but I'm just saying, like, the written text that we have, at least they've already established that kind of hierarchy. Now, that being said, definitely if it was older than that, yeah, I mean, I suppose it could have happened, but then you got to like dig up evidence, which is hard to do without
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the
written
evidence
word.
on hand,
Yeah.
but like some archaeologists and anthropologists and stuff I think they've taken things that they've found in terms of just you know, shrines and stuff like that, where they think this is the case. But
Yeah.
it's like you're going so far back in history. It's like, again, like pre-writing, it's like gets very
You're piecing together fragments.
so it's very tough to tell.
You found like a piece of a statue in a place that doesn't belong, and you're like creating a bunch of assumptions around it. But yeah, past Assyrian, Isha obviously comes from like ancient Mesopotamian Ishtar, which also like is associated with Astartes or Isis in Egypt. And then Kurnous comes from like Celtic religion. And you see there's a version of Kurnous too in Warhammer Fantasy, the horned god, who like is like the head of the Wild Hunt and things like that. So still has a lot of those same attributes. And we know Warhammer Fantasy is not connected to 40K, but it's one of those kind of like mirrored reflections, right?
Sure.
But yeah, and it's got a lot of that same attributes of like representing like the wild. I don't know a lot about Celtic mythology, but I do believe that like Kurnous is like a very like represents like vitality and life and like passion, which so
interesting.
Yeah, and pretty much like all the gods are pretty much ripped off from either Celtic, Egyptian, Greek, or Mesopotamian, or like Indian, ancient Indian, like Vedic religion. So
yeah, I mean, there's a case to be made that like the Scandinavian gods can be traced all the way back to Mesopotamia.
But yeah, which is news to me. I actually like, I always thought that was some weird assumption that people made just because of the similarities. But I've heard a pretty strong argument that like the Egyptian gods might be the origin for a lot of these, like
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like just the stories get morphed, and like as people kind of take those stories and run with them. And then I also know that the Nordic gods are also taken from like ancient Germanic people. So like Woden.
But the problem is those untamed savages like forgot how to write.
Oh no, they didn't just forget how to write. They didn't learn or didn't make up a way to
write.
But
if they adopted it from Sumerian or Egyptian, they must have known how to write at some point. Or
I suppose that's true. Yeah,
those people would have, or the people, Middle European people would have learned it somehow. So, who's to say? But
yeah.
Anyway, shall we continue on the pantheon here?
Hold on. Just because it's relevant to what we were talking about, just some comments in the chat from Nemo. He's saying I think he's talking about Assyrian might be related to Asher from the Sumerian and Assyria. I thought about that too, just by the way the name sounds, but I think the attributes of him sound more like the Vedic descriptions. But it very well could be. Like I said, GW just smashed together a bunch of different like religious groups, so it's hard to tell who exactly they're aping or if they're just combining ideas. He also says, which is also seems to be a national racial god of its own era, also tied with its replacement by Christianity and New Age. I'd wager the Greek claim is post-imperial Assyria from the Persian invasion occupation. Yeah. And again, that goes back to like you had Babylon, like Assyria, like as each city conquered the next city, they kind of either adopted or morphed the old religion. So sometimes it's hard to like pick apart what was mixed in later or what was the original ideas before it got tainted by like foreign invasion or so
yeah.
But I love all this stuff, man. Like I love that I'm on this episode because that's what I live for.
Yeah. And we all know that the Imperium of Men is sort of a contrast with the one Holy Apostolic Catholic Church.
Yeah. Well, and even just like you're saying, Christian, about joining, they'd go invade a new place in real life, and then they'd kind of morph their religion into their own, or kind of combine them a little bit, just so everyone could kind of get along and have some cultural ties. The Imperium did that a lot too during the Great Crusade when they went to a planet and started spreading some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you have these kind of like imperial cults that like deify the emperor, but mix it with whatever the local religion was, and
like syncretistic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as we know, Christianity did a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Even with the Roman era.
Okay. Kayla Mensha Cain. Kayla Mensha Cain, the bloody-handed god, is the embodiment of war, vengeance, and the destructive aspects of battle. His fiery, wrathful nature makes him both feared and revered. Known for his uncontrollable rage and boundless power, Cain once served as the defender of the Eldari, wielding unparalleled might in the face of their enemies. However, his fragmentation during the fall left him broken into shards, which are worshipped as avatars within the craft worlds, continuing his legacy as a relentless force of destruction. Cegorach. Cegorach, the laughing god, is the trickster and master of deceit within the Eldari pantheon. Known for his cleverness and wit, he is both a savior and disruptor, playing games with mortals and gods alike. During the fall, Cegorach eluded Slaanesh by fleeing into the webway, preserving his essence and becoming the patron of the Harlequins. His humor is dark, his wisdom sharp, and his actions unpredictable. Yet his schemes often serve to protect the Eldari from annihilation, albeit in ways they rarely understand.
It's interesting that there's usually some type of trickster god. You know, we can think of Loki pretty easily in Norse mythology and whatever. It's interesting, that there's like always a trickster god, somebody that kind of is keeping everyone in check through jokes or through dark humor, or just by showing them the error of their way and like, this is how ridiculous you're being right now. Very interesting. That
it's a common trope.
Go ahead, Christian.
It's a common trope. Like it goes even into like Native American mythology, which would have evolved separately from a lot of like the old European mythos. They also have like a trickster god. I think it's either a fox or a wolf.
Interesting.
Yeah. Even like the Celtic and Gaelic people, like the Fae, which have been come to known as like fairy people. The Fae are like considered trickster spirits, and are actually, if you look at like some of the original renditions and descriptions of Fae people, they're horrifying nightmares. They're not like little fairies that we see in Disney. It's they're quite scary, and they are tricksters. Like they deceive and taunt people, so
sorry, it was a coyote in Native American mythology. And then if anyone's a fan of Moana from Disney, well, obviously Disney didn't make this, but from
Polynesian or whatever.
Polynesian culture, Maui is also like that trickster god. So it's like very common. Wukong, Chinese mythology, like is almost every kind of like ancient pantheon has that trickster god archetype.
Why do you think that is? Like, is it what does that say about humanity, man?
It depends who you ask.
Okay.
There's a very like strong group of people that like look at symbolism and everything. I am not cut from that cloth. I'm hesitant to make connections. Like
If I could
go ahead,
I could speculate here, and this is just pure speculation, so don't take it as gospel truth. If you look in like particularly in Scandinavian theology, like Odin worship, they're very deterministic. Like they view the universe as like meticulously determined by the gods. So, and the gods like very carefully plan everything that happens to you. So there's nothing that doesn't happen to you that isn't pre-planned by the god. So whenever an event in life happens, that is like completely random, because in our universe there's just randomness that we can't account for, right? And that doesn't seem to be inside the plan of the gods. I think they would blame it on Loki or something, right? Like they'd blame it on a trickster, and the trickster element is often chaos, right? It's chaotic. It brings in
uncertainty.
That sort of uncertainty of the plan. That's just again a pure speculation, but that would be kind of my guess. It's like a way to explain why things seem just random sometimes.
Yeah. And there's so many different like schools of thought on this. I just want to be clear, even though there are parallels and sometimes there's like a true genealogical, like you can track where, let's say, a story came from and as it evolved and changed between cultures and people. I'm not of the monomyth group of people who believe like, all stories come from a place, or all stories have a certain parallel, or humanity tells the same story, just like kind of changed out characters. If people are familiar with Jordan, I can't believe my mind is so shattered right now. I keep forgetting the monomyth guy.
Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, like the Joseph Campbell Hero with 1,000 Faces. People who are familiar with that work. I've never been a big fan of that. I do think humanity is more creative and we're creative. Express ingenuity. I'm fried tonight. I'm sorry.
Do you have your standard 7 Monster energy drinks in front of you?
No, I don't. I've actually not had an energy drink in a couple of days. I am feeling
well,
it.
That's the problem. You run on Monster, and without it, you're just as dumb as I am.
Just a mortal.
Man.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. But anyways, I'm not of that camp. Like all stories are connected, or people always tell the same type of story over and over again. I don't believe that. Although a lot of what we're going to be reading is obviously going to be paralleled with real life things, because for the simple reason that GW took real things and morphed it into their thing.
I've always liked the line, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. You see a lot of the same points in all stories. You see a lot of the same kind of stuff pop up, but it's not the exact same. It's just kind of that slight little.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. All right. Vol, the crippled smith god, is the divine artisan and craftsman of the Eldari pantheon, known for his mastery over creation. He forged weapons, tools, and marvels of unparalleled beauty and power for the gods and his people. Vol's tragic tale of betrayal and suffering underscores his role as a figure of perseverance. His works, including the fabled Blades of Vol, remain a testament to his skill and dedication, even as he was ultimately defeated and chained by Cain for his perceived failures. Liliath. Or is it Lilith? I don't know. The maiden god. Well, it obviously sounds like Lilith, but which I'm guessing that's where they're inspired.
Spelled a little differently.
Yeah. Very typical in GW fashion. The maiden goddess of dreams and prophecy. Oh, there you go. Is a figure of ethereal beauty and gentle wisdom. She represents hope and the mysterious visions of the future, often appearing in Eldar lore as a protector of their aspirations. Lilith's foresight shaped many of the pantheon's decisions, and her dreams offer both guidance and warning. Her tragic destiny, consumed by Slaanesh during the fall, is a poignant reminder of the fragility of hope amidst chaos.
Cool. The next one we have is Moriheg. Moriheg, the crone goddess, is a mysterious and darkly revered figure associated with fate, death, and secrets. She is depicted as a veiled figure holding a chalice filled with the blood of knowledge, which she drank to gain her profound understanding of destiny. Once feared for her grim wisdom and unrelenting truth, Moriheg symbolizes the inevitability of death and the eternal flow of fate. Her influence resonates in the Eldari's constant struggle to shape their futures against the tide of doom. Interesting. Ynnead. Though not part of the original pantheon, Ynnead, the god of the dead, represents the culmination of the Eldari's hope for salvation and renewal. Formed from the souls of the Asariani's dead within the Affinity Circuits, Ynnead is a nascent deity of rebirth and liberation. Partially awakened during the Battle of Port Demesnes, Ynnead now serves as the patron of Ynnari, a new kindred striving to unite the Eldari and to bring an end to Slaanesh's dominion. Ynnead's rise heralds a potential destiny for redemption for the Eldari, though its full power remains shrouded in mystery. One thing to note about Ynnead is, for me personally, I always kind of pictured it as the god of the dead, and yes, it is. But I almost pictured it like almost Grim Reaper-y vibes, a dark god for sure. Where when doing this episode, I definitely started picturing it more as like that salvation, the hope, renewal, rebirth. It's not about death necessarily at all. This god has the power over death. And that's kind of what makes it interesting, as opposed to like Moriheg, which is more associated with fate, destiny, death, and all that kind of stuff. And there's a path for everyone, and at the end of that path is the end of it. Where with Ynnead, at the end of that path now lies renewal as opposed to death.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. A lot of, I think, our negative connotations with gods of death come from like a very modern contextualization of ancient gods. Even like Hades is often depicted as like a bad guy, or like, typically gods of death, if you look at like modern interpretations, like the Disney's Hercules version, right? But they weren't always pictured like that historically. And especially for a culture like the Eldar, again, are strongly influenced by like Vedic Hindu religion, which has a lot of cycles, and like the soul is immortal, right? So like death isn't really a finality, it's just a transforming rather than an ending. And so that's kind of like Ynnead being a god of, like you said, Mark, a god over death rather than like a god of death. He doesn't represent a finality, just a transformation to the next evolution or the next cycle, which again, like this draws so heavily from like real life religions. Like it's pretty funny. Like the same way the Catholic Church
Even Nemo
is so
says
clearly like in the Imperium, like it's the same for these other things. But yeah, go for it.
Nemo says Moriheg feels like the ancient Greek women cutting those strings of life. I watched the Disney Hercules movie recently, and they were cutting the strands of fate or whatever. When that gets cut, it's over.
Those women are the Fates.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
They're called the Fates. And
Oh,
the funny thing is, Moriheg is actually a Celtic goddess, as well, or more like Moriath. There's a lot of good comments. A lot of the chat seems to be really into like ancient religion, it seems.
Yeah. The next god we got up is Gea, Gea. In the shadowed myths of the Eldari, Gea, sometimes also Gaia, stands as a figure of profound mystery and duality, a divine being of grace and purpose. She is remembered as the consort of two mighty deities, Asuriani, the Phoenix King, and Kalamenshi Kane, the god of war. Her role within the pantheon is shrouded in ambiguity. What the fuck? Yeah.
Ambiguity.
Okay. I need ambiguity. Yeah.
You need
I need
a
a monster
monster
in
too.
me too.
Yeah.
Her story is interwoven with the Her story is interwoven with the cosmic forces of creation and destruction. The essence of her tale is preserved in an ancient ritual of the dream of Asuryani, a sacred song and dance that echoes the celestial drama of the gods. Through these performances, her connection to the immortal pantheon is both celebrated and veiled in a reminder of her place within the tapestry of the divine destiny. How would you say this one? Hoec? Hoec?
Hoec, yeah.
Is that from anywhere else? Do we know?
It just from the sound of it, my guess is probably Celtic and even possibly Aztec.
We'll go with it.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, like some of these other ones are very obvious where they would kind of come from for sure. Hoec, the eternal wanderer, is a being as enigmatic as the labyrinth webway which he is said to embody. Legend speaks of him walking the hidden paths between worlds since the dawn of the stars. His presence a constant yet elusive thread in the history of the Eldari. Revered by some outcast pathfinders, Hoec symbolizes the spirit of exploration and endless pursuit of the unknown. To those who seek his wisdom, he is a guide through the veiled corridors of destiny, a reminder that the webway itself is as much a mystery as the stars it connects. Very cool.
And Bird in the chat says,
yeah, so
Hoec Tua.
Yes. Come on, we're gonna make that scam coin.
He's the god of the internet.
Yeah.
No, I looked up Hoec online, and it's the Hindustan Oil Exploration Company Limited, India's first private oil and gas.
Of course, I was gonna say that, but it seemed sideways. So.
It seemed too obvious.
Yeah, so that's the Eldar Pantheon. There is one that I didn't mention that we're going to save for the very end. That gives you kind of a very base idea of them, kind of a couple of the relationships between them. It's interesting, like, Gia and Isha, they both have the ability to procreate, it seems, and make love to their partners. So that's, something interesting to consider. Does that make them more human? Does that still keep them in that warp category? Hard to say. Up to the reader, I suppose.
Yeah, again, like, we don't know. Are they talking about like a real like sexual contact, or are they talking about something else that, are they genetic, old one genetic scientists that are creating a race in labs, right? Like,
yeah.
Is this a mythologized version of something else? But yeah, it's all very cool.
Yeah, so the first big piece of Eldar mythos that we will talk about is Isha's tears.
All right. In the age before the rift between gods and mortals, Lilith, the maiden of dreams, foresaw a chilling fate. The Eldari, beloved of the gods, would one day bring about the downfall of Kalamensha Cain, the wrathful god of war. Her dreams, renowned for their prophetic power, cast a shadow across the pantheon, and Cain, consumed by fury and fear, resolved to preempt his foretold destruction. In his rage, he turned his blade against the Eldari, unleashing a slaughter so vast that the heavens trembled under its weight. Desperate to end the bloodshed, Isha, the goddess of the earth and mother of the Eldari, pleaded with Azirian, the Phoenix King and ruler of the divine court. Moved by her plea, Azirian decreed a great divide, a barrier to forever separate gods from mortals. This boundary severed the materium from the immaterium, ensuring that no deity would ever again directly intervene in the affairs of the Eldari. Cain's campaign against the Eldari was halted, but the cost was a chasm between the divine and their children. For Isha and her consort Kurnous, the god of the hunt, the separation was unbearable. Their love for the Eldari burned too brightly to be extinguished by divine law. They turned to Vol, the smith god, for aid. With his cunning craftsmanship, Vol forged the spirit stones, sacred artifacts that allowed the gods to communicate with their mortal children in secret. Through these stones, Isha and Kurnous continued to guide and nurture the Eldari, their whispers shaping the destinies of their people. And which we know that spirit stones will later become what they use to trap their souls when they die. But
Yeah.
such defiance could not remain hidden. Cain, ever vigilant and unyielding, uncovered their secret and carried the revelation to Ziran. Though Azirian understood the love of Isha and Kurnous that had broken his decree. With a heavy heart, he passed judgment, consigning Isha and Kurnous to the wrath of Cain, to face the terrible consequences of their defiance. Thus, the threads of destiny wove a tale of love, loss, and the unyielding will of the gods. Yeah, I'm not going to doubt, like, we'll spend all night if we, like, pick apart every kind of religious parallel, but I did just want to say that, like, a lot of those archetypes exist in so many myths, too, of, like, you know, divine rules, or gods interact with humans in very strict capacities, gods breaking those rules, punishments for what the breaking rules it comes from. Like, there's so many, but just wanted to
and the sort of tragic romantic tragedy is also kind of a trope amongst ancient mythology.
Divine. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do the next one, Mark?
Sorry, just getting a little lag on my end. Yeah, but that's the story of love, loss, hope, and rebirth. Guidance as well. But the big thing that came out of this story is the continuality, or the continued ability for the Eldar to live. So, you know, we got Isha's tear, which came from Isha, where now, like Christian said, when the Eldar die, they put their souls into these as a way to save them. The next myth that we will get into is the war in heaven. Cain, the bloody-handed god, seized Isha and Kurnous in his wrath, subjecting them to tortures of unimaginable cruelty, each act a testament to his boundless fury. The agonized cries of the divine echoed across the pantheon, stirring unease among the Eldari gods. Though many silently disapproved of Cain's merciless vengeance, fear silenced their voices. Only Vol, the smith god, dared to intervene openly, his resolve forged as unyielding as the metal he shaped. Petitioning Cain, Vol purposed a bargain. In 1 year, Cain would release Isha and Kurnous in exchange for 100 swords, each imbued with divine craftsmanship. Vol's skill as a smith was legendary, his blade so potent that a single one could turn the tide of battle. Empowered by a lone mortal to stand against legions, he toiled tirelessly, poured his heart and soul into each of the blades. But as a year drew to its end, fate dealt him a cruel blow. 99 swords lay finished, yet one remained undone. In desperation, Vol substituted a mortal crafted blade among the divine, trusting in Cain's pride to blind him to the ruse. When the swords were delivered, Cain, awed by their beauty and lethality, released Isha and Kurnous as promised. It was only after they had fled to safety that Cain discovered the mortal blade, its imperfection a glaring insult among the other divine weapons. His fury erupted like a star's death throes, and he condemned Vol as a liar, a thief, and a cheat. Cain's wrath became like a storm, and he unleashed his vengeance upon Vol, igniting a cataclysm known as the War in Heaven. We'll stop here for a quick second. This War in Heaven is very different than the War in Heaven between the Necrontur and the Old Ones. This is a very different little...
Hold on.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I was like, wasn't the
Counter theory. Could this be the mythologized version of the War in Heaven?
According to the Eldar, yeah. Hey, it's
Yeah,
I like it. If you were the creative director of GW, you could maybe do that.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I'm looking at like ties though, and like how that would actually work. Like, okay, so maybe let's come back to that after we read these next two paragraphs. And discuss that further. If this could be the War in Heaven, we'll get a little more details though.
Yep.
This divine war tore the pantheon asunder, dividing the gods into factions. Battles raged with unimaginable ferocity, their echoes shaking the mortal realm. Heroes rose and fell, alliances shifted like the sands in the storm, and even the Eldari themselves mirrored the conflict, embroiled in a mortal struggle that reflected the divine chaos. Asuryani, the Phoenix King, watched the slaughter with cold detachment, his regret growing like a shadow as he realized the far-reaching consequences of his decree against Isha and Kurnous. Yet with all the myths, the story splinters into variations. In one telling, the sword's betrayal is tied to not Cain's vengeance, but to the war against the Necrons and their star god masters, the Satan. In this version, the mortal's blade's imperfection leads to the Eldari's failure in their divine purpose, a reminder that the creation as psychic warriors forged by the Old Ones to battle the Necron. Whether a tragedy or prophecy, the tale of the swords of all endures, a reflection of the destiny and the flaws woven into the fabric of the Eldari's existence. Yeah. What about this is just a crazy thought? Like, what if these gods, I don't like it even as I'm saying it, are actually Satan beings and maybe
gods.
some of, star gods themselves that can manipulate some things and create stuff. I'm only thinking that just because of like, okay, so the one god Vol created a bunch of swords to rescue the other guys, to make a trade with them. And he tricked them. And then this started off a huge war. And maybe this could be like a small kind of comparison to a star god tricking the Necrontur into making the deal of energy for, living forever, essentially. But then ultimately they were tricked in that. Like I said, I'm not really a big fan of this, even as I'm saying it. I'm just thinking out loud and seeing what strings we can kind of draw.
So I like that you're doing this exercise, because I think this is actually a thing that happens with real mythology, where we try to retroactively place things, and that's where we kind of like can go into wild territory that like stuff is definitely not true. My biggest criticism of that theory would be that the Catan we know have trouble with the warp. Like,
Like they can't even interact with it at all.
So that's kind of like the biggest flaw.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't mean that it couldn't be like a form of banishment or like a later issue for them, or like
a piece of technology solves that warp problem for them.
Yeah. Like you said, like it's not my favorite theory, even as you're saying it. But again, we don't know. But like I said, I think the exercise in trying to make those connections is exactly what we do in real life with mythology, and like it can put us way off base where like two names sound similar. So like, oh, that's got to be the same person, even though it just is coincidence, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what this ultimately is. The war in heaven, the wars in heaven are two very different wars that probably happened at two very different times even.
While that's fully possible, another way that I was thinking it could work was if one of these gods was a stand-in for not a person but a people. So like Vol was the Necron tier, or was Cain represents a people rather than the Cain one is tough because we know Cain exists to some capacity because of the avatars of Cain that exist in 40K, but kind of like in that vein as like is Vol representative of a people rather than a person?
Like that's interesting. Like the old ones, they seeded a bunch of the worlds, and they had many client races. They had the Eldari as their main one, but maybe the Vol race was another one that worked closely with the Eldari, and Asuryani is the first old one, or the old one in charge of this project, and then he kind of had key figures for each race.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Any of the above, right? So that's why I'm hesitant to say anything conclusively, because again, I always default to we don't know. It's fun to speculate, but it's cool to be able to like consider the possibilities, right?
Yeah. The one thing we can take away from this piece of Eldar mythos is, I'd say two things. For one, the gods aren't perfect, and that's pretty common for most gods. And two, the gods fight amongst each other. So they're not all on the same page, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it does give you an insight to the character of whether these gods are gods or individuals or races. Like, you get an idea of at least what they're representing on an ideological level.
Yeah.
All right. ready for our next myth. I feel like we should be sitting around a campfire while we tell these stories.
Yeah. Okay. Crackle,
Ynnead.
crackle.
Ynnead, the light of the dawn. As the strife among the Eldari gods reached its zenith, Val, the mastersmith, poured the last vestiges of his divine essence into the forging of a final blade, the sword named Ynnead, the light of the dawn. It was a weapon of unparalleled brilliance, destined to challenge even the mightiest of foes. With Ynnead in hand, Val rose against Cain, the bloody-handed god, to settle their conflict in a duel of fateful proportions. And again, I'm not going to get into it, but there you have your magic sword myth, right? So common in so many.
Yeah, I was gonna say magic item, tome, what have you.
Yeah,
it's very
and specifically the sword is got a lot of like weight on it too. But yeah. The clash was fierce, each strike echoing across the cosmos. But even the might of Ynnead could not match the unrelenting fury of the god of war. Cain triumphed, casting Val down in defeat, maiming the once proud smith and binding him eternally to his own anvil. A grim punishment that symbolized the breaking of divine rebellion. Again, Smith god getting beaten down by war god. That happens with Ares and Hephaestus. But because Ares was sleeping with Hephaestus' wife, Aphrodite. Anyway.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yes. Again, like so much of it. And I don't want to stop every time because, like I said, we're going to be here all night, like doing every parallel. But anyways. Just know that they're there.
Man, it adds to the mythos of it, and that's the best thing about mythos, man. It's like these like little tidbits of truth that it's just like what is true, what is not. I don't know. It all could be,
and layers, and that's why I love 40K personally. Every time you read a section, like you can draw where names for history or mythology, right? This name was like a French general, and they use it to represent like an Imperial Guard commander, right? Stuff like that. There's all these little tidbits. Yet destiny was not finished with Ynnead. The great falcon, Falchu, consort of Azirian, the Phoenix King, carried the blade away from the battlefield. With the swiftness of wings and the wisdom of ages, Falchu bore Ynnead to Eldanesh of the Red Moon, the greatest mortal champion of the Eldari. Eldanesh, noble and valiant, accepted the sword and the burden of facing Cain himself in single combat. My Eldar mythology is a little lacking. Eldanesh is a mortal Eldar, correct?
Yeah, Eldanesh is a mortal Eldar, and we kind of said it. Falchu is actually a great falcon, and then that makes me wonder: consort is that always sexual, or could it just be like information kind of consort? You know.
Are you implying?
Was he fucking an eagle?
That's what fans really want to know. I think consort doesn't necessarily imply a sexual relation, but with mythology and animal sex, also you got to keep in mind it's not outside of the realm of possibility. Loki getting pregnant as a wolf, Zeus banging women as a goose, like it's not unheard of. So. The mortal hero stood against did I read that already? The mortal hero stood against the divine war god, their battle etched in the annals of myth and fate. Eldanesh fought with unmatched courage, his blows guided by the light of Ynnead. Yet even his strength faltered before the raw, unyielding power of Cain. In the end, the war god struck him down, crushing the champion's body in a display of divine wrath. As Eldanesh's blood spilled across Cain's hands, it stained them a crimson hue that would never fade. From that moment on, Cain was forever known as Calamensha Cain, Cain the Bloody-Handed, a name that carried the weight of his deeds and his insatiable thirst for vengeance. For tabletop fans, you can see that on the model. I don't know about the current. Does the current model have a bloody hand?
I could check.
Yeah, at least the olden model. I'm pretty sure the new one does too. That's why the model has like a bloody-handed gauntlet. So now you know where that comes from.
Yeah, and even that like comes, we just make all these tie-ins to other places. That's like Cain and Abel killing the brother, killing
the mark of Cain.
I don't see the blood, but no, it's there. It definitely is there.
Okay. I was gonna be
Some
mad if they
people don't
took that
paint it
out.
quite like blood.
No. Well, those people need to read up on their Eldar mythology.
Yeah, some people are painting it like lava more so than blood. It seems like
Yeah.
where they're doing it like fire.
Right.
Fools.
Idiots. They should listen to this. Witnessing the devastation, Azirian, ruler of the pantheon, declared the war in heaven at an end. Cain, his vengeance fulfilled, departed the field, his victory tainted by the blood of Eldanesh and the sorrow that echoed through the hearts of gods and mortals alike. Another cool little reference, Tolkien also riffed a lot on ancient mythology too, and a lot of his ancient Elven, Eldar in the Tolkienian sense is reflected in a lot of this mythology, which comes from like actual real human mythology. Just to make those ties.
Yeah, like in Tolkien, he has the god of the hunt, Kurnous, as well, I think, and it's very similar to this one as well. But there's a couple.
Yeah, and not just that, but like the story of like the Eldar kind of like falling into this like rage and wrath where they kind of like slaughter each other, like the kinslaying and stuff. Like all that's also found in Tolkienian mythology, which is adopted again from real life mythology. So yeah.
Nemo Forever says Tolkien Estate did win a lawsuit versus GW. Tell me more about that in the chat.
That's interesting because it'd be such a roundabout way because GW also does manage the New Line Cinema contract for Lord of the Rings. But right. New Line isn't the Tolkien Estate, so that could totally happen. Sure. I just don't know what they sued him. Oh, he's talking about the term the Eldar. Yeah. So that's also why we say the Eldari. Like if you go back, when did they change that? 8th edition?
Yeah, really? maybe around there.
Yeah.
They were called. They have that name trademarked. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, honestly. But Eldar.
Like, can you trademark orc? Like there's lots of names that Tolkien uses that like everyone uses.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the details. This is the first time hearing of it, although I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's the way that's used. Like if your Eldar look and sound and act exactly like your Eldar, then you might have a case. I don't know. Again, I don't know much about this case. But in any case,
I'm gonna make a character called Aragorn and just spell
and see what happens.
See what happens.
Bait them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's why GW they changed a bunch of names, like Imperial Guard. They kind of morphed into like a High Gothic, Astra Militarum, and stuff. Yeah. And also the reverse, I think, like is also true. Like where GW is not being defensive, they're being like offensive. So now people can't use their IP either.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Aragorn, the Space Ranger. That's a lawsuit
from Disney and from the Buzz Lightyear fans are going to be pissed too.
Cool. Now we jump forward in Eldar mythos quite a ways, millions of years. In the shadow epochs of the galaxy, millions of Terran years after their ascension to the stars, the Eldari forged a mighty empire through their mastery of the webway, a labyrinth passage through the immaterium. By the 29th millennium of the imperial calendar, their civilization had become an apex of decadence, their unchecked desires and emotions weaving a terrible consequence. Within the warp, these turbulent energies coalesced into a new and ravenous deity, the chaos god of Slaanesh, the prince of pleasure. The birth of Slaanesh marked the fall of the Eldari and the doom of their pantheon. In the cataclysmic surge, Slaanesh descended upon the Eldari gods. The divine ranks fell swiftly. Lilith, Asurion, and even Morhaig, the ancient and blind goddess of fate, perished beneath the wrath of the newborn deity. Cain, the war god, rose to confront Slaanesh in the battle of the apocalyptic proportions, yet even his might faltered before the prince of excess. Cain was cast down, his divine essence shattered into countless fragments. These shards became the avatars of Cain, bound within the infinity circuits of every Eldari craft world. A bitter fulfillment of Lilith's prophecy that the Eldari's own deeds would bring about Cain's destruction, even as he fought to save them. The fall of the Eldari resonates through their myths, stories that each Eldari is bound to, bound to know, for they are woven deeply into their identity. The complexity of their language mirrors these tales, layers with references and connotations beyond the grasp of the uninitiated minds. Take, for instance, the word Faochu, which not only names the falcon Gravtanks, but also recalls the mythological falcon of the legends, imbuing the word with meanings that transcend its surface. Among these myths, a tale from the end of the Eldari's war in heaven speaks of Isha, the god of fertility and growth, who was claimed by Slaanesh. Her cries for aid reached the ears of Nurgle, the plague lord, who seized her from Slaanesh's grasp. Yet this was no rescue. Nurgle imprisoned Isha within the cauldron chamber, forcing her to taste every pestilence and poison he concocted. Those that pleased him he poured into the mortal realms, raining disease upon countless worlds. Those that displeased him he consumed, only to regurgitate and refine. Yet even in her suffering, Isha whispered hope to the mortals, imparting knowledge of cures to counter Nurgle's blights wherever the plague lord turned his attention away. The war in heaven, though central to Eldar belief, is a term fraught with ambiguity. Man, that word again. There we go. Ambiguity. It is used to describe the ancient conflict between the Necrontyr and the Old Ones that raged 60 million Terran years ago, when the galaxy was still young. Scholars, both Imperial and Eldar, debate whether one tale is inspired by the other, or if they are wholly separate events linked by name only. To the Eldari, the war in heaven is a religious and mythical narrative, a metaphor for a great cosmic struggle of their gods, rather than the precise historical account. Yet, the existence of gods in the Warhammer universe cannot be dismissed outright. Divine entities often arise as psychic manifestations within the immaterium, born from the collective unconscious of vast sentient populations. Slaanesh was birthed from the unrestrained desires of the Eldari, just as the nascent god Ynnead now stirs within the Infinity Circus, a being of death and hope. In stark contrast, the Satan, the so-called star gods of the Necrontyr, are material beings of immense power. Unlike the warp-born deities, the Satans draw their substance from the stars and mortal life, bound to the physical realm and vulnerable to the psychic forces that dominate the immaterium. Thus, the Eldari myths intertwine destiny, tragedy, and echoes of cosmic truths. They're resonating, shaping not only their culture, but the very fabric of the galaxy they inhabit. Yeah, so those are kind of the big myths out there for sure. There are a couple other ones that we will get to at the end. Like I keep on saying the Rhana Dandra, the end times. We haven't got there yet. There's a couple other small little ones that, the Eldar Harlequins are probably singing and sharing and all that stuff, but nothing really important happens. It more teaches you like a lesson about something minor as opposed to like some grand overarching theme that affects everyone. So at this point, we can jump back to each of the...
Sorry, Mark, you're freezing out there. Can't quite catch what you're saying. Do you want to repeat yourself?
Yeah, we'll jump now to the gods of the Eldari, and we'll talk about them in a lot more detail now that we kind of got the main myths under our belt and the kind of their main character traits. Before we do, maybe we'll jump to the chat real quick. Jacob asks, could Exodite Eldar summon an avatar of Cain? Might his shards be in Exodite world spirits or only in craft worlds? I think probably they don't do it. I don't have any reason for that other than for that. Just I haven't seen it, and there is a lot of Exodite lore out there, so you'd think you'd see it once or twice. But it seems like also the Exodites kind of just want to be left alone and do their own thing. They kind of gave up on what the Eldar were doing and decided to kind of just do their own thing.
Yeah, and there must be some level of kind of, I don't want to say alignment, but the Exodites, they populate maiden worlds, right?
Yeah,
which probably are more associated with their maiden. Is it Crone worlds or maiden worlds or both? I can't remember the difference between them.
I think it's maiden.
Yeah, I would think it's made, and it makes sense as like being untainted or untouched.
Yeah.
In which case they're probably more associated with like your Gia or Gaia or whatever Eldar version of that goddess is, right? So they might
Sure,
have
got
more in
it.
alignment with those gods, or like Kurnous would make sense, but not that they can summon them the way like Cain is the only one that can be summoned as an avatar. It looks like, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, and again, like Mark said, like we just don't have evidence for it. Not to say it's not possible. It's just we've never seen it before, and you'd imagine you would have by now if it were possible.
Yeah.
And so even with that, the whole concept of like how the avatar is summoned is through the blood of the young prince, which comes from like an Eldar noble line, which like would they even have that on a maiden world?
Yeah.
Maybe
That's
not.
a great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but like, yeah, who knows, man.
But there's certain things you need to summon the avatar.
Yeah. All right, so the first guy that we'll dive into is Asuryani. We'll learn a lot more about him now.
Hold on, I just gotta pause you one sec. Azurian.
It's very different than the guy I say, which is also somebody in 40k.
Well, the Azuriani are the Eldar race, and then Azurian is God. Is the god. It's an easy mix-up. I'm just saying for clarity. In this
the
case,
Phoenix
like,
Lord is also
Azurian.
one of those. Yeah. The Phoenix Lord of the Dire Avengers, which his name is
James.
James. Oh, that's Asurman. Azurman. Yeah, Azurman.
Yeah, no.
ASU.
I think there's Azuriani means like the Eldar people, the Eldar race.
Okay.
Like, the followers of Azurian.
Nathan says when is Trevor's next lesson? So yeah, so Trevor taught me some High Gothic. Now he needs to teach me some Eldar linguistics so I can brush up on that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to call you out. It's just that one particular mix-up is quite significant, especially in this episode.
Very significant, yes.
Anyways, you want to take it?
No, this one's you.
All right. Azurian. In the veiled annals of the Eldari's ancient myths, Azurian, the Phoenix King and father of the Eldari, looms as a figure of cosmic might and destiny. Revered as the progenitor of gods and all living things, Azurian was said to embody the psychic essence of the universe itself. His dominion over the divine pantheon was unmatched, yet his radiant flame was ultimately extinguished by the ravenous birth of the chaos god Slaanesh during the fall of the Eldari. Thus, the fate of the Phoenix King intertwined with the doom of his children. Also, I'm not going to say that I'm pronouncing that name any better than anyone else. I can only say it a certain way. Azurian's connection to the divine ran deep, entwined with his twin brother, Kalamensha Cain, the god of war, and Gaia, the goddess who held them both as consorts. Symbols of fire and light defined him, and his image burned eternal in the Eldari's mythic cycles. Among his many gifts to his people were wisdom and the ability to shape psychic energy, blessings that brought both greatness and sorrow. While these gifts magnified the Eldari's longevity and power, they also diminished their fertility, planting the seeds of their slow decline. In the aftermath of their tragic fall, the Eldari who dwelled upon the craft world reshaped their destiny, forging the disciplined Azuriani path to harness their volatile emotions and relentless pursuit of perfection. Renaming themselves as the Azuriani, or children of Azurian, they honored their creator even as they mourned their diminished glory. To outsiders, they became known as the Eldar, a name reflecting their humbled state. So I was wrong. It's not all Eldar, just the craft world Eldar are the Azuriani.
Bitch. That's fine, though. We've all been there.
We've all done it. Legends speak of Azurian's enduring influence, even in his absence. The Farseers, visionaries of the craft worlds, believed that by uniting their psychic might, they would achieve unparalleled feats, the creation of Ynnead, the god of the dead, or even the resurrection of Azurian himself. Such dreams ignite hope in people still yearning for their lost divine flame. Again, not to draw this out every time, but dead gods are also a common thing, especially like that king of the gods. Among the craft worlds, Yandin guards the sacred ever-burning flame, a shrine dedicated to Zirian. Their world rune, Light in the Darkness, symbolizes this eternal guidance. Azurman, the first Phoenix Lord and founder of the Path of the Warrior, is said to have been chosen as Azirian's immortal scion, bearing his patronage into battle. I guess in some ways you could argue that the Phoenix Lords kind of represent almost an avatar of their gods too. Is there?
Yeah, but they all represent Cain though, whether it's his like fiery, more so than like different ones.
The
like
whole...
Suriani is the only one who has like an aspect kind of dedicated to him in war.
What about Hoek?
I haven't seen anything about that, but
Are
hey
the
man,
Swooping Falcons not?
I don't think so. When I was looking at Hoek, they really only had like 1 or 2 lines on him. He really wasn't a major aspect at all.
Okay.
It would be cool though, like, you know, Vol would be a cool aspect of like warrior smiths where they all have their own custom war gear that they've made themselves or something like that to kind of honor Vol.
Yeah. And again, like that, it's weird because you don't want to get too territorial because, like, again, like the Guardians and the the Avengers kind of represent more Azurman than anyone, or sorry, Azurian. But they also fight, right? It's almost like Athena is also a strategic god of war, goddess of war versus Ares. Like, it doesn't all have to be one god's domain, but then also if you take too much from that god's domain, then you kind of diminish them. So like,
sure.
would you want an aspect for every god? I think it would be kind of cool personally, but then like, how much do you take away from Cain to the point that Cain's irrelevant because everyone has their own?
Sure. Yeah.
Path. Yeah. It's a balance. It's a balance.
Nathan asked, these Eldar gods, do they have any relation to the warp, or do they draw their power from different places? We kind of touched on that a little bit at the beginning of this episode. We don't know. We don't know what the fuck these Eldar gods are. It's all mythos, man. Like, it's all rumors and whatever.
It's magic.
It's magic.
We can do, but like if Slaanesh killed them, they can be killed by creatures of the warp. Like, I guess the warp can create things that are more powerful than them. So
yeah. And we do have an example like where Cain cripples Vol, so they can hurt each other too. So does that put him in the mortal kind of category as well?
And then and then you have like Azurian separating the Materium from the Materium, right? Like, are you of it to be able to manipulate it? Again, like if you take the path of like they're actually describing old ones, they're not necessarily of the warp, but they can control or use the warp. And then Azurian being like the gift of psychic power, which again is warp related. So like, yeah, are they warp entities? Are they not? Are they physical entities that interact with the warp or can control the warp? We don't know.
Yeah, up to you, really.
I lost where I was.
0.9, I think.
I had are there any like just because we're talking so much about mythology, are there any like half Eldar, half god hybrids in the story? Like Hercules or Gilgamesh or Achilles or whatever.
Demigods.
Yeah.
No, they kind of mention we mentioned that fuck, I forget his name. Eldanesh. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Eldanesh. Yes. I'm gonna research him. I'm pretty sure though he's still like just a mortal elf, and there's no like funny business going on there.
So the weird thing is with that, Jordan, is like all Eldar are also the offspring of the gods too. So like
that's true. Yeah.
You know,
I guess, yeah.
How you did draw that line. I would argue the closest thing to a demigod would be like the Phoenix Lords. Like they are imbued and empowered supernaturally beyond.
Jacob in the chat literally just said that too.
Yeah, but like even them though, like it's such an interesting thing because these the Phoenix Lords, they're only 10,000 years old, and in a history of 60 million years, like that's a fucking new thing that's happened.
I do believe Azerman, man, all their names are so similar, and I cannot get them straight. Azerman, right? He's the Phoenix Lord of Azuria.
Yeah.
I think he emerged at the fall of the Eldar, if I'm not mistaken. I know it's in a novel.
Yeah.
I read pieces of it, and I don't remember. He might be older than that. But yeah, the other Phoenix Lords would have appeared later on because their aspects, shrines would have appeared later on. So
yeah.
I don't know. Even the martial legacy of Azurian echoes in celestial tales. The Sunstorm squadrons of the Craft Worlds draw their name from an ancient legend of the Phoenix King's battle against the Destroyer of Worlds. It is said that in a desperate clash, Azurian unleashed a solar storm of unimaginable fury to drive back Kalis Ra, known to the Eldari as the Nightbringer. This act, like much of the Azurian's mythic life, carved destiny into the stars themselves, forever etching his name into the fabric of the galaxy. So there you have a very clear association with the star gods of the Necron, the Catan. Even that name, obviously, again, space Egyptians, Necron, Ra, sun god, stars. It's all there, man. You just got to connect the dots.
Yeah. Even they got the Eldar aspect warrior, Megan Ra, god of death.
Yeah.
This is an interesting little part that we learned, though. Asuryani has the ability to open up solar storms, which I'm kind of chalking up to like warp rifts and stuff that he's opened up. Just back then when he opened up, the warp was way more calm, like we were talking about. So when he opened up this solar storm, it was just turbulent energy more so than open it up and now demons are pouring through it to fuck everything up.
Yeah, it's like the difference between like, a controlled fire versus like a fire that just like rips through. Man, that's a bad example currently, but
yes. A fire with demons in it. Yeah. Wait, no. Skip the fire. Skip the
also
fire.
a bad example.
Yeah. Cool. We'll jump to the next god, Isha. Learn a little bit more about her. Isha, the Eldari goddess of the harvest, fertility, nature, and healing, is revered as divine mother of her people. In the mythical cycles of the Eldar, she stands as the embodiment of life, growth, and boundless compassion, a luminous force of benevolence amidst the pantheon marked by strife and tragedy. As a consort of Kurnous, the god of the hunt, she is both a creator and a nurturer, her essence intertwined with her natural order of the cosmos. Legends tell that Isha, moved by the solitude of creation, breathed life into the non-Eldari species of the universe when Asurion, the Phoenix King, turned away from his creations. She alone dared to act when Kelemenchi Kane, the wrathful god of war, sought to annihilate the mortal Eldari, spurred by Lilith's prophecy that they would one day bring about his downfall. Isha pleas for mercy for her children resounded across the divine realms, her voice and shield that saved countless lives. Like this just really screams like this was an old one in this particular kind of imagery where, her and Asurion, they made this, they seeded these planets, and Asurion left, and Isha was kind of there to monitor, was kind of the first point of contact to kind of teach them how to do things. The old one left behind to raise them.
Yeah. And I love that, man. Like I love that explanation where like less mythological and more like a mythologized reality that happened.
Yeah. When Asurion decreed the separation of gods and mortals, severing the immaterium from the materium to halt Cain's rampages, Isha defined this decree. She continued to guide her children in secret, her whispers carried by the winds of destiny to those who would listen. Her defiance was not one of rebellion, but of love, a love that endured as the Eldar fell into the abyss. In the dark days following the fall of the Eldari, Isha's fate turned grim. As Slaanesh, the newly born Chaos God, devoured the Pantheon, she was seized in its insatiable grasp. Yet, as the shadow encroached, salvation came from an unexpected quarter. Nurgle, the Plague God, wrestled her from Slaanesh's maw, imprisoning her within the Plague Gardens. There, she became an unwilling subject of his experiments, forced to endure and endure again the blight of every new disease he unleashed upon the mortal realm. Still, even in a captivity...
Sorry, I was just going to comment on like Nurgle being like, it makes sense, like Isha being a goddess of life, Nurgle being like a twisted form of life and of death, and that cycle. Picking her to be his experiment because she can heal herself from every illness, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
It kind of shows an interesting relationship between these gods and the chaos gods. Like the chaos gods seem to be aware of the Eldar pantheon and what they can get up to and what they can do to some degree. If, you know, Nurgle at the peak, the climax, came right in and stole Isha away from Slaanesh, must have been aware of these powers, must have been aware somewhat of the Eldar pantheon.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And again, parallels again. I promise I'm not gonna stop every time, but there's that whole Hades and Persephone story mix into this. So yeah, it's everywhere. I'm gonna stop.
Please don't do it. Don't do it. Still, even in her captivity, Isha's spirit burns bright. It is whispered among the Eldari that she sends out soft murmurs of defiance. I don't like that. Offering the cures of Nurgle's plagues to the mortal realm. Her voice, faint yet unwavering, brings hope to those who listen, her wisdom emerging in the moments when she is most needed. This belief extends beyond the Eldari. San Istancia, Minst, a celebrated human rejuvenant adept, was haunted by visions of the maiden trapped in the eternal cycle of suffering. Consumed by the dream of creating a pancreas that would... Panacea.
Panacea.
Okay, that's close.
It's a cure all.
Yeah. Creating a panacea that would cure even the wounds of the god. Minst's obsession led her to abandon her former life and join the crew of the Elucidian Star Striders, which are like Eldar corsairs, seeking answers.
Are they not the rogue traders?
No, I'm pretty sure they're that new Eldar kill team that they released.
No, they're the rogue trader kill team.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Looking at pictures, you're right about that. Touche, my dude, touche. Yeah, so joined up with them. The myths say that wherever Isha walks, rose-like flowers bloom in her footsteps. These blooms said to ward against the corrupting energies of chaos, symbolizing her enduring love for all living things. For those who find them, they offer not only protection, but a glimmer of her presence, a reminder that even in the face of despair, life and hope endure. This would be a cool quest for some Eldar corsairs or craft worlders to go on to recover one of these roses, you know?
Yeah, man, I love Eldar mythology because there's so much you can pull from it to like inform your warband or your personal lore.
Yeah.
All right. Calamentia Cain. Calamentia Cain, known as Cain the Bloody-Handed among the Eldari, is a god whose very name echoes with the wrath of war, the fury of destruction, and the endless thirst for bloodshed. He is one of the last surviving gods of the Eldari, standing as a force of unrelenting violence and vengeance in the wake of the fall. In the time before the Eldari's tragic decline, Cain was second only to his brother, Azurian, the Phoenix King, in power. The god of war and murder was forever locked in a bitter rivalry with Vol, the god of smiths and crafting, a conflict that would shape much of Eldari history. Cain's recklessness and bloodlust knew no bounds, and it was his infamous act of slaying Eldanesh, the first and greatest of the mortal Eldari, that sealed his fate. Azurian, horrified by the god's violent act, cursed Cain. From that moment on, his hands were forever stained with the blood of Eldanesh, a reminder of all of Cain's dark deeds, earning him the title Bloody-Handed. But Cain's violence is not confined to myth. The avatar of Cain, the living embodiment of his wrath, awakens in the heart of battle, a harbinger of destruction for the craft world Eldari. Towering 3 times the height of a man, this fiery juggernaut is encased in molten armor, its every movement a terrifying display of power and rage. In one hand, it wields a flaming blade inscribed with ancient runes of death, while the other bleeds eternally, dripping the lifeblood of the god's insatiable hunger for war. Its eyes burn like pits of unrelenting fury, and to look upon them is to feel an overwhelming terror, a fear that consumes the soul and fills the heart with despair. The avatar of Cain strides across the battlefield, leaving behind a trail of flames, its very presence a herald of death, a walking embodiment of destruction itself. Just a note on his blade. His blade can take different forms. Like it can be a sword, it can be an axe, a spear. Yeah, at least in model form. Who knows what other forms it can take as well.
Yeah. Like I would imagine, since it's like a fragment of him, each little part just like has its own little thing that it really likes to use.
Yeah, and I imagine it could even morph. Like the way I was pictured it could change its form in his hand, like whatever he needs at the time. If he's going to chuck a spear, like his sword will just morph into a spear, and that's just like my personal vision.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, ties to mythology, that rivalry between the god of war and the smith god, and then also the god of war. Like we mentioned, the Zirian represents like a more noble kind of warfare, whereas Cain is more of this like wrath and vengeance and like very emotional fury. Ares again, that god of fury and wrath. Athena, more strategic warfare.
Jacob in the chat says, thoughts on the connection of Isha and Leman Russ. Russ mentioned seeking the tree of life in the warp to heal the emperor, which could be Isha in Nurgle's garden.
I think yes, I do. I think that's totally the case. I just don't think Russ realizes what his pursuit is, because if he knew he was chasing a Xenos god, he would try to kill it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is cool though.
Only Reboot Gilliman consorts with Xenos.
Man. Okay, can we be clear about that meme too? Because that pisses me off. It's like everywhere. All people think about.
Well, as we talked about, consort doesn't necessarily mean sexual, Christian. You just got a dirty mind.
You're right. I've been on Reddit too long.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they are not sexual partners. And man, there's a bunch of fucking, what do we call them? We call them goomers out there. They're just so coomers. Yeah, there's too many people that just watch porn too much, and their brain, it just has turned to mush, and then they put sexual Xenos and Reboot Gilliman together, and you just scratch your head and you think, go outside and touch a woman, a real one.
No, don't do that. You go to jail.
Yeah.
It will be worth it. Trust me, it will be worth it. Change your life.
But yeah, back to Isha and Leman Russ. I do think that is the case. He just doesn't realize what he's after, and it creates, again, like I like that cool like mythologized, like the tree is actually a person. Like these are symbols and representations for other things that are interchangeable.
Yeah. Before we get back to the notes, he says, Jacob says this: I like the idea, but prefer Russ not knowing fully. It would help the possibility of him having to develop an Odin-like wisdom and trusting an enemy. First of all, never trust the Xenos. That's rule number 1 when it comes to Space Marines. And if you trust the Xenos, you've been doing it wrong. Back to the hypnomat for you to get reindoctrinated.
Yeah. And that was the other comparison I was going to make, is exactly like, obviously the Nordic inspirations for Leman Russ ties into like Odin's quest for knowledge and the tree and everything. So
Nathan says he's going to go touch female Space Marines. Impossible, because they don't exist. So.
Straight and direct, Mark. I like it. All right. On the field of battle, the Avatar leads legions of Azuriani warriors and aspect warriors into the fray, smashing through the enemy lines with his immense strength. The sheer force of his strikes can cleave battle tanks in two, while its flaming aura turns flesh to ash and sears everything in its path. The Avatar is more than just a weapon of war. It is the living expression of Cain's endless rage, and the craftworld Eldari call upon it only in their darkest hours. But the Avatar's existence is not one of constant war. For most of its time, it lies dormant, a hollow shell of smoldering armor kept deep within the sacred chambers of the craftworld. Each craftworld possesses its own Avatar, a symbol of war's promise, yet trapped in a timeless slumber until the day it is needed. The ritual that awakens the Avatar is a secretive and ancient tradition known only to the craftworld's exarchs. So then there you go. It eliminates the exodites from even the knowledge of how to summon this. Yeah, when war looms, the Azuriani choose a bold warrior known as the Young King to undergo a sacrificial rite that binds their soul to Cain's essence. In the dark depths of the craftworld, the Young King's mind and body are consumed by Cain, merging their spirit with the god of war's fiery soul, filling the Avatar with the rage and power to rise and lead the armies of the Azuriani into battle. One question I have is, if the Avatar is destroyed, is it permanently destroyed for that craft world?
No, they can make a new one for sure.
Okay. Because I remember Fulgrim
I
killed
remember.
one.
Yeah, and it was like very traumatic and stuff, and then it leaves like the fucking hardened husk of the avatar there. But no, I'm pretty sure they can make more of them.
Okay,
They
I'm
just
just
got to do
curious
the
if
ritual
it's
again.
if it's confined to a certain process.
Which also then I wonder, can you have multiple avatars like in one craft world?
Then makes you wonder, why do you have anything else but avatars in your army? Questions only lead to more questions.
I just did a quick search, sorry, and no, you can't
Yeah.
have twin avatars. But also, I looked for fucking 1 second, so don't quote me on that.
Take that with a grain of salt. It's
Yeah.
the best Google could summon.
Oh, I was looking at Legend of Korra avatar stuff, so definitely not correct.
You start going off on a tangent of like Avatar. Firebenders can summon. Yeah. Right. Once the ritual is complete, the avatar stirs to life. Its armor burns with unholy fire. Its runes glow with ancient power, and its eyes blaze with the fury of a god. It is no longer the empty shell it once was, but a living force of vengeance, ready to unleash Cain's fury upon the enemies of the Eldari. Yet the price is great. The young king is lost, their soul extinguished by the act, leaving only the burning spirit of Cain to reign in its place. The spirit of the young king may join Cain in the afterlife, or it may be scattered across the winds of the Immaterium, a forgotten soul in the unending tide of time. So this is an immense sacrifice for the Eldar, because Eldar are immortal so long as they can keep their souls intact or protected in the Spirit Stone or in the Infinity Circuit. But when they sacrifice someone to Cain, if they don't get called to the equivalent to their Valhalla, then they risk just utter destruction.
Yeah.
So.
And that's even just like, yeah, you mentioned the soul stones and the soul aspect, but they're also basically immortal. So they're also sacrificing that aspect of it, where it's not like you can just toss this really old Eldar in there who's on his deathbed anyways, a la Dreadnought him with an avatar. That's not happening either.
Yeah, you're losing that soul. So it is an immense sacrifice and should only be done in like the most desperate times. Like, you're giving up your life to save your craft world. Humanity has only glimpsed the avatar of Cain in fleeting moments of war, but the tales of its wrath have spread far and wide. The Imperium of Man has crossed paths with the craft world Eldari many times, and records of the avatar's carnage can be found in accounts of rogue traders and the sacred texts of the Adeptus Ministorum. Yet interpretations of the avatar's nature are varied as the stars. Some view it as a mechanical engine of destruction, others claim it is a demon of battle given form, while most agree that it is the very embodiment of war itself, its flesh forged from the burning rock and its blood flowing like molten lava. So again, like, that is an aspect we do need to consider when we're talking about what the nature of the Eldar gods are. Like, is the avatar of Cain a machine? Is it a demon, like a bound demon of some kind? Is it,
is this what they were like? Is this what Cain was like even before he was sharded, and like all of the Eldar pantheon are like flaming fire monsters, or is this specifically him?
So many questions, and like, we make a lot of assumptions, obviously, because it's called the Avatar of Cain, and like Eldar mythology tells us what it is, but is it really? What remains clear, however, is that the Avatar's presence on the battlefield is a force to be reckoned with. It is a spark of fury that ignites the hearts of the Ziriani, filling even their fragile bodies with a lust for battle that drives them to victory. And though the Avatar has been felled in battle on rare occasions, its flame always returns. Like the anger of the Eldari themselves, it rises again to bring destruction, to once more answer the call to war. In the end, the Avatar of Cain is not just a weapon of destruction, it is a symbol of the eternal rage that defines the Eldari, a fire that will never be quenched, a blood-stained hand reaching out across the cosmos to reclaim what has been lost.
Crazy. So yeah, I guess in order to kill like him or to stop the avatars from coming, you'd have to destroy the Infinity Circuit, because that's kind of where he comes from. And yeah, it talked about, on battlefield, sometimes he gets slain or defeated, and then that flame still is there, though. It's still in the Infinity Circuit waiting to be reborn.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Kurnous. In the ancient time before the fall of the Eldar, there existed a powerful bond between Kurnous, the wild hunter, and Isha, the mother of life. Together, they gave birth to the Eldar race, with their daughter Lilith standing as the harbinger of fates yet to unfold. It was Lilith who glimpsed the future filled with strife and carnage, where the mighty god of war Cain would be shattered into countless pieces by the hand of the great mortal enemy. Enraged by this vision, Cain, seething with fury, sought the Phoenix King Asurion, demanding the annihilation of the Eldar. In response, Asurion, with a heavy heart, raised a monumental barrier, casting the realm of mortals far from the gods, sealing their fates apart. Yet in his divine act, Isha was left broken, her heart torn as she could no longer see or reach her mortal children. Grief-stricken, she and Kurnous turned to Vol, the masters of the smith, pleading for the means to bridge the vast chasm. In this forge, Vol crafted the tears of Isha from the first spirit stones, gemmed and imbued with the essence of their sorrow, through which they could whisper their own progeny. I'm kind of even thinking too, it's talking about Asurion separating them from the mortal children. And, my mind goes first to, the warp. The Eldar are in the immaterial or in the materium, and the Eldar gods are in the immaterium. But it's almost more like the old ones are in the webway, which we know like to do, and they separate themselves off from that little aspect and like close the portion of the webway off. Is another way to kind of look at it.
Yeah, like there's so many ways to cut this cake.
But Cain, ever watchful, uncovered their secret. Driven by his own wrath, he reported the breach to Asurion, who, blinded by his own rage, saw the actions of Kurnous and Isha as nothing short of betrayal. In his fury, Asurion handed them over to Cain, binding them to the god of war's mercy. What followed was an eternity of torment, for Cain's imprisoned them, forcing them to endure ceaseless sufferings in the flames of his fury. Yet years turned to eons, and Kurnous and Isha lavished under Cain's wrath, their spirits all but broken, until Vol, the steadfast protector, sought to free them. With a heavy heart, he bargained with Cain, offering a forge 100 enchanted blades in exchange for their release. Vol worked tirelessly, his hands blistered upon the anvil, and in time he completed the pact, though one final sword remained unfinished. In his desperation, Vol substituted a mortal blade, one crafted by the hands not of gods, and presented it to Khorne. Once freed, Kurnous and Isha fled, but Cain, ever vigilant, quickly discovered the trick. In a fit of unbridled fury, he decried Vol's deceit, and in a vengeful rage he vowed to make the smith suffer for his treachery. Thus, the War of Heaven was ignited, and a battle that would shake the very foundations of existence. Cain chained Vol to his own anvil, punishing him for the hand that he had freed Kurnous and Isha. As the war raged on, the echoes of the past reverberated in the stars. It is said that the Eldar's original homeworld once possessed 3 moons, each a reflection of the ancient power that has shaped their destiny. One of these moons, greenish and dim, would come to be known as Kurnous, the hunter's moon, forever marking the land of the Eldar with quiet, distant glow. And so the tale of Kurnous, Isha, Vol, and Cain became woven to the very fabric of the universe, a myth of the gods' betrayal and inexorable march of fate.
These are like, it's like so mythological. Like, I wonder, do you think in the 40K universe, are these stories real, or are they, I know we've kind of covered this before, but like, is it made up, or is it like they just don't remember it properly? Like, these were just maybe highly advanced precursors to themselves.
The answer is
yes. I always lean towards that the Eldar pantheon were old ones, and there might have been one of the Eldar pantheon who might have been an Eldar themselves, but I think most of them, were old one members.
Like that would be the best explanation.
Yeah, for sure.
Jacob
I just picture the.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just picture the affair. Sorry, Christian, you go.
Jacob in the chat Says there we settled it. Then they weren't old ones or great Eldar or anything. The Elder gods were moons.
They were moons the whole time. Oh man, that really
Didn't
makes
even see it. It was right in front of us the whole time.
the moon Isha and the moon Kurnous bumped into each other and made little asteroid babies. How does it
Well,
work?
like, I have to go back into my old ones, lore, I guess, because I don't exactly remember how they like them, just more of the mechanics, because like the way 40K explains basically magic is the warp, right? Like that's how you get it without it calling it magic. You have this thing called the warp, and you have psychers and whatnot who can leverage the power of the warp. So like, but with this, there's like no talk of that, but the abilities of these gods seems like pretty magical or pretty fantastical without any explanation of technology that isn't like very primitive. It's like we're talking about swords here.
So, but hold on. Once again, the question is, are they able to use a warp and they just don't call it that? Are they using technology that's so advanced it's magical? Even you talking about swords, like we know they call one of the swords of Vol was actually like a giant spaceship battle station.
Oh, okay.
So like again, are they figurative swords, right? Like
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Vol, the god of crafting and creation, was a being both revered and enigmatic, hailed as a craftsman without equal, driven not by the pursuit of truth, but by the pursuit of beauty. In the wake of the banishment of the Eldar from the heavenly realms by the Phoenix King, Kurnous and Isha, the grieving parents, found themselves torn from their children, separated by the great divide in the mortal and divine. In this sorrow, they turned to their uncle Vol, his aid to restore the lost connection between the gods and their offspring.
I think for the sake of time, we're gonna skip past Vol. We've heard his story now from like 4 different angles, essentially. Maybe if you want to read the last 2 paragraphs of this kind of section, just so we don't have to read all that again.
11.
Yeah.
Amidst the chaos, just to that point, like, yeah, a lot of what we're saying is repetitive because we're like telling the same story from like different people's perspectives. But yeah, you don't need to hear the same thing over and over again. Amidst the chaos, or what are we hiding is the other question. Maybe we don't want you to know the full truth.
This is how myths happen. We don't need to tell that one again. I think this is what happened there.
Amidst the chaos of the celestial conflict, Vol's legacy lived on. The talismans of Vol, powerful weapons crafted by the Eldar, were created to one day destroy the Catan should they ever return. But the emergence of Slaanesh spelled the end for most of the Eldar gods, consumed and absorbed by the new chaos entity. Cain and Cegorach alone survived the cataclysm, standing as the last remnants of the shattered pantheon. Yet even in the wake of destruction, Vol's influence remained. The wraithsmiths of craft world Kaelor, true to their craft, continued to venerate Vol as their most powerful patron, with monuments erected in his honor by Gwir the Radiant, ensuring that the legacy of the Smith god would endure even in the darkest of times. So they still cool. honor, they still honor and celebrate the gods even though they're dead.
Yeah. Yeah, those talismans are cool. Just more kind of relics that you can go out and find. Yeah. The next one we have is Cegorach. In the shadowed recesses of time, amidst the cosmic upheaval that reshaped the Eldari, there remained a single god untouched by the cataclysm, the Laughing God. Known by many names, Cegorach, the Great Harlequin, the Great Fool, and the First Fool, he was a trickster of the Eldari pantheon, the weaver of jest and master of illusions. In an age of grandeur and decadence, he danced on the edge of Eldari psyche, neither fully of them, nor entirely apart. When the dark birth of Slaanesh consumed the divine, casting the Eldari gods into the abyss of her unholy grasp, Cegorach alone remained, his survival whispered in the echoes of legend. Some speak of his mocking nature, a force so distant from the insatiable hunger that birthed the Chaos Gods that shielded him from the psychic corruption of the Eldari Empire. Others tell of a more fateful tale, that when the gods fell to Slaanesh devastating embrace, Cegorach fled the battlefield, seeking refuge in the chaotic maelstrom. It was only when Cain, enraged and defiant, rose to confront the newborn god that Cegorach hid behind the blood-soaked form of his brother, his wit and guile keeping him safe amidst the raging storm of war. And Cain and Slaanesh battled to death. It is said that Cegorach took his leave, fleeing into the ancient webway, a labyrinth of tunnels and passageways that transcends time and space. There Cegorach remains, a lone being the lone being who knows the path of every door and corridor, the hidden veins of the universe that no other mortal or god can follow. The webway. Once a creation of the Eldari, now serves as the laughing god's domain, a place where he can shape and twist fate from the shadows, unbound by the grasp of Slaanesh's dominion. It is within the depths of the webway that Cegorach presides as the patron of the Harlequins, an enigmatic and mysterious order whose every step is guided by his influence. Unlike their craftworld kin who guard their souls with spirit stones to protect them from the devouring hunger of Slaanesh, the Harlequins walk a different path. Their souls are bound directly to the laughing god, their faith in his power in resonance with the eternal spirit protecting them from the ravages of the warp. Upon their death, they merged with the very essence of Cegorach, becoming one with its divine emanciation. Their spirits woven into the eternal dance. Yet there is one exception to this sacred protection, the solitaires. These rare and solitary figures, often seen as embodiments of Cegorach's whimsy and might, are the only Harlequins whose souls are not automatically claimed by their god. In death, their souls must be won from the grasp of Slaanesh, a sacred and perilous trial that only the laughing god himself can undertake. The fate of the solitaires caught between realms of light and shadow is an elusive and mysterious as Cegorach's very nature. Thus, the laughing god endures, a trickster and patron, dancing through time and space, his name whispered on the lips of those who dare walk the edges of fate. As the cosmic struggle between the gods continue, Cegorach remains hidden, elusive, a silent orchestrator of destiny, waiting for the next turn in the eternal game. Yeah, very interesting. So this is like, once again, now we flick these gods back into them being warp deities, where this god is able to absorb the souls of the dead and protect them. Now, whether, we go back to, is he holding them in some type of spirit stone and keeping them safe? Is he actually absorbing them into himself? That's all up for debate. Hard to say, but there is that form of protection there.
Yeah.
It's also kind of neat with that whole solitaires, how he has to go and intentionally free them from the warp and free them from Slaanesh's grip. Little personal quest there for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do like the whole thing with how the oh my gosh. I keep wanting to say solitaire now that you said it. What's the whole group called?
Harlequins.
The Harlequins, yeah. How the Harlequins do their dances that tell of the legends and myths to the Eldercraft worlds. Like, I think that's a really cool form of storytelling and how they keep their legends alive. And again, it goes back to that interpretive nature, right? Now, if you're getting your stories not even verbally, you're getting it through a dance that represents things, and you kind of have to know what these moves and like different parts of their culture mean, right? They're not telling you the story; they're embodying the story, and you have to kind of like you have to have some kind of cultural context to make sense of it.
Yeah. So, before we get to the next god, Moriheg, Nathan asked, what happened to those 100 swords? A lot of them are still out there, and I think we do talk a little bit more about them at the end of this episode. So I think we talk about them when we get to Ynnead. So just be patient on that question, and we'll get an answer for you.
There's always an answer, and if not in this episode, I'm sure in one episode to follow.
Soon, TM.
Right. Moriheg. Moriheg, the crone goddess, stands as the third and final deity in a trinity of female elder goddesses. her form withered and ancient, a vessel of mysteries long forgotten. Within the depths of her skin, she carries a rune pouch that contains the fates of mortals, bound by the threads of destiny itself. She's a figure of both revered and feared, the keeper of the unknown, whose power flows in whispers and omens. All right, I'm just going to get this out of the way. Obviously, based off of the Celtic goddess, the Morrigan, and they also have like a Trinitarian female goddess situation going on too, which is obviously drawn into this. And then also, like the three fates from Greek mythology. And the Morrigan's is like goddess of like death, like fate, and one other thing I can't remember. But a lot of it rhymes, like it's very obviously taken.
Yeah.
In the shadow tales of old, it is said that Moriheg was once the consort of Celis Verilathian, the death god yet to be, and from their union came the Banshees, her daughters of mourning and wailing. Also, Banshees actually come from Celtic mythology too. In the pursuit of forbidden wisdom, Moriheg sought to delve into the divine secrets hidden from within her own blood. Only Cain, the war god, held the power to harm a god, and it was to him that the crone goddess turned. She sent her daughters to torment Cain with their piercing, sorrowful screams, and in her plea for respite, she asked him to sever her hand so she might drink from the well of her own blood. Reluctantly, Cain complied, and in the bloodshed that flowed, Moriheg gained the knowledge she sought. In return, the aspect of the Banshees was granted to Cain, forever binding her fate to his. So even in that, like the Banshee aspect is tied to Cain through war, but it's also got this like more distant connection to Moriheg. So yeah, that's another connection.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know a lot about Celtic mythology, honestly, but I don't know if the Morrigan has anything about like self-harm or anything like that. But definitely like the Odin story of trading his eye. You see that with the Primarch, Magnus.
Sure. Yeah, there's usually a cost to knowledge for sure.
Right, exactly. That's a theme here. So
yeah.
As the war in heaven began, Azurian, the Phoenix King, sought to peer into the future through the crone's eyes, asking her for the fate of the gods. But Moriheg, ever enigmatic, could find no answer. She followed Cain in silence, taking a small measure of his fiery blood, which she burned upon the scales of balance in her lair. When she returned, Azurian demanded the truth only for the crone goddess to reveal that the fate of the gods was not his to know. It would be the mortal Eldanesh and the Eldar who would decide whether the gods lived or perished, their choices woven into the strands of time. And once again, we have like a king god trying to learn the future about like the gods and like the end times, like a Ragnarok type situation. This is interesting too in 40k context because the gods, so again, like Azurian is told that his children are going to kill him, the Eldar, and his vision comes true. Like he's trying to stop this from happening. And the Eldar do kill him, but in a roundabout way by birthing Slaanesh. So, like, again, that's a cool thing about mythology. Like, these things are true, but in a roundabout way. So, like, what other things are true, but not exactly like explicit,
or things that are gonna be true just hasn't happened yet.
And that's a huge piece as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
After the fall of the Eldar, the remnants of their original homeworlds became known as the Crone Worlds, a haunting testament to the power and influence of Moriheg. The name itself was a reverence to the Crone goddess, the bearer of fate. Even these dark days, the inhabitants of Craftworld Yggdrasil remained devoted followers of Moriheg, obviously Yggdrasil, their hearts bound to their mysterious and fateful ways. And you have a Craftworld that's like dedicating itself to a god or goddess in this case.
Cool. I never seen that much of that before until right in this episode, that like that much that they still hold that much reverence for these gods, that they're still erecting statues for them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I always imagined it would be there, but I also haven't really dug deep into their mythology either. Yeah. So it's cool. I'm glad that they do it because then again, it opens up so much more storytelling. If you want like
different craft worlds have different favorites for sure.
Yeah. In the twilight of time, the 5 severed fingers of Moraheg became the crone swords, relics of immeasurable power that would one day be key to the resurrection of Ynnead, the god of the dead. Thus, Moraheg's influence endures, her hand reaching out from the realms of fate to shape the destiny of the Eldar and the gods themselves. Again, it's cool, that poetic, like, fingers reaching into fate physically, but also metaphorically. Like, mythology, man. Cool. It's like the ancient aliens guy instead of aliens. Mythology.
Mythology. That's funny. The next god is Lilith, the maiden, a goddess of dreams and fortune. Weaves her ethereal influence across the realms of the Eldar. Daughter of Isha, the goddess of the harvest, Lilith is a figure both mystical and powerful, embodying the endless flow of destiny. Her presence is felt in the dreams of mortals, where the fabric of fate unravels and reveals visions of what is yet to come. In an ancient dance of Asurian, it is said that Lilith, in a dream woven by the stars himself, foresaw a grim future of Calamenchi Kane, the war god. She witnessed his destruction at the hands of the Eldar, mortals, born of Kurnous and Isha, his own kin. Her vision was a chilling one, foretelling that the god of war would be torn asunder. I feel like we've heard this again for a couple times, so I'll jump down to the last little bit of this. In the days before the fall, the Eldar homeworlds were graced by the 3 moons, one of which bore the name Lilith, the Maiden Moon, a celestial beacon of her power and influence. During the height of the Eldar Empire, many uninhabitable worlds were transformed into paradise worlds, planets of such lush beauty, sanctuaries for the Eldar race. When the fall shattered the heavens and brought ruin to the Eldar, those worlds that survived the cataclysm were forever marked by the touch of Lilith. These worlds, now known as the Liliathan, or the Maiden Worlds, stand as a testament to her grace and foresight, a reminder of the goddess who once held up the strands of destiny in her hands. That's cool. She's seen a fate, seen what was going to happen, but still tried to avert it as best as she could. But man, even if you know the outcome, and this is a constant thing with the Eldar, in their Farseers, they look into the future and see what's going to happen, and then they battle against it. But ultimately, you can battle it, and you might be able to change small little portions of it, but that main strand of fate is going to happen every time.
Yeah. And you see that fate and destiny and they're very strong themes, both for the Eldar who are able to see the future and again in mythology, right?
Yeah.
I do kind of like Lilith's even just knowing that, I guess, cataclysm is coming and still creating these garden worlds, if you will, that are a testament of time, which you don't see much of that kind of thinking in the grim dark universe. So
yeah. That kind of goes to the Exodites as well on these Lilithian worlds, or the Maiden Worlds, and that must be their kind of patron saint for the most part. This god foresaw to make this world for us to specifically inhabit.
Yeah.
Very tied.
All right. Gia or Gia or Gaia or however you want to say it. Obviously, we know what that's tied to. Gia is the name of the female Eldar god that existed within the pantheon of the Eldar race. She is notable for being the consort of twin deities, namely the Phoenix King Azurian and the war god Calamenchi Kane. The legends surrounding her and her immortal kin were told through the ritual song and dance known as the Dream of Azurian. She is also known as the name Gaia, and that's it.
Yeah, there really wasn't much on her or the next one that we talk about.
I do believe that comes from Egyptian mythology, having a consort goddess of 2 gods, that are I think
I think it's called a whore, Christian. I don't think it comes from any mythos. I think it's just a whore.
Or that comes from the real world. Yeah. All right. Hoek. Hoek is a mysterious wanderer known to the Eldar who is said to have been one with the webway and has walked the paths between planes since the stars themselves were young. Some amongst the ranks of the outcast Eldar pathfinders are known to revere this individual. Yeah. So again, like you have another group of Eldar, the Pathfinders, right? Like they revere this god because it makes sense. Like he's all about the walking the path, or like walking between paths, right? Which is what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually was I was wondering, like, does each god correlate to some path, Eldar path? Or is there not really a strong correlation between each Eldar
A
path?
lot do, for sure. A lot do, but it's not a one-to-one, and it's definitely not like they're not comparable. Like even if this one worships this god, the next one might not worship it, but just try to follow in their footsteps. Like it's different for every god and every path and all that.
And then also the number of paths. If you remember our paths episode, yeah, like there's too many paths. That like if you're on the path of the cook, like what god, right? Like Mark said, it's not like a 1-for-1 type thing.
Yeah,
there's some that definitely makes sense as like generally.
Yeah. I like what the chat's saying about myths. Purge says, I see mythos as an interpretation of truth, and that's why it's a belief. Then Nathan says, doesn't all mythos have some element of truth to it? Then Purge says, yes, but how we personally interpret it, often through irrational thought, projecting it into belief. And then Nathan says, yeah, that's a fair point. And then Purge goes on to talk about the cargo cults in World War II, where they are planes that drop off supplies to islands that had never seen people, and then they started worshiping these planes, which is a pretty fun story, really. Go look into a podcast about the cargo cults, because they're pretty wild what you can do to an uneducated group of people with tech. All right, up next we have Ynnead. Ynnead, the god of dead, stirs in the unforeseen depths. I'm just wondering if we want to go into him. I need to do another Ynnari episode. Maybe we save him for him, because he's not necessarily a part of the Eldar pantheon as much as he is.
Like he's newer, yeah.
And I think I'd rather have some time for some call-ins. So let's skip over Ynnead, actually.
Man, you're just teasing people.
That's what I do. I like to tickle and tease their brain. But yeah, we'll come back to him in another episode, featuring him a lot more heavily and just how he was birthed and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't do it justice in the paragraphs that we have here. So we'll jump to the cosmic serpent, which we haven't mentioned at all yet. So let's see what this is all about.
In the mythic, oh, sorry, do you want it?
No, you can.
All right, cosmic serpent. In the mythic tapestry of Eldari legend, there exists a being so ancient and enigmatic that it transcends both the material and psychic realms, the cosmic serpent, known as Dromlach. It is said that Dromlach, with his infinite reach, is the keeper of all secrets, past and present, for he is the only creature to exist simultaneously in both worlds. The cosmic being, vast and unfathomable, holds dominion over the mysteries of the universe, his knowledge stretched across the boundaries of time and space. But Dromlach is not alone in his strange existence. His offspring, Starweaver, Voidweaver, and Skyweaver, are beings of equally capricious nature, and together they have long been allies to Cegorach, the laughing god. The cosmic serpent, in his enigmatic generosity, has lent his aid to Cegorach, even allowing the god to ride upon his serpentine form. In gratitude for the serpent's strange partnership, the Harlequins, ever devoted to the laughing god, have named many of their war machines after the cosmic serpent and his offspring as symbols of both power and mystery. But go ahead.
What kind of myth would this be without a snake? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, and
now, will it eat its own tail?
Yes. I wasn't even going to mention it because I'm like, snakes are so pervasive, and like we could spend another 2 hours just talking about dragons and snakes, and we're not going to do that. But there's very obvious.
I'm surprised it took this long for us to get to it.
Yeah, like this is such a weird part of the mythology. Like it doesn't really play any major part in it, and only really has a little bit to do with the laughing god and stuff. But carry on.
But Dromlach's influence reaches beyond the Eldari. The cosmic serpent is a figure woven into the myths and creation stories of many cultures, even among species as distant as the Baalite. To them, Dromlach is more than a being. He is a symbol of death and eternal journey from one existence to another, an immortal thread that connects all things. Born from the belief itself, Dromlach exists beyond the confines of time and space, a being untouched by the passage of aeons. Among the Eldari, the Eye of Dromlach is a sacred site of immense importance, a place where the Webway Gate lies hidden, its significance recorded in the annals of the race. This was once referenced by the Inquisitor Bronislaw Shevak, who sought the secrets of the mysterious place. On Craftworld Samhain, the cosmic serpent is venerated as a symbol of enlightenment and knowledge. The name Samhain itself speaks to its legacy, meaning quest for enlightenment, as the Eldari have long held that the snake and secret knowledge are one and the same, both embodied in the ancient figure of Dromlach. The Zuriani of Samhain carry the mythic symbol with them, emblazoned upon their jet bikes, grav tanks, and air support, marking their devotion to the secrets and power of the cosmic serpent, who, though shrouded in mystery, is ever present in the quest for truth. Yeah.
So is this almost like a maybe this isn't the right term, but like the first god or like a creator god for the whole pantheon? Almost like this isn't this is not the same type of creature that the rest of the pantheon is. You know, this is something very different. Is this kind of like the universe itself, or what does this really represent?
You know, my mind instantly went to the Webway.
Okay.
If the Webway is like a living entity, and it's a serpent that
like
goes between worlds, and like you called Star Weaver, Void Weaver, and Sky Weaver, implying that it like weaves between worlds. That's where my mind went right away.
That's kind of cool, you know, like if the Webway is like solidified Wraithbone or solidified warp energy, essentially, like maybe it is manifesting some type of spirit, some type of serpent thing that's like making the Webway as it goes or whatever.
Yeah. Like I said, I could be totally off base, but that's right away what I was thinking. And again, like, are these living entities, or is it just ascribing living entity features to a thing? Right? Like this creature keeps secrets. It's talking about all the secret pathways within the Webway, right? Like,
yeah.
Is it literally keeping secrets, or is it describing the secrets of the Webway? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not an Eldar expert.
I think I'm gonna look more into it like that, though, for sure. This is kind of like the god of the Webway itself, some type of manifestation happening because of the Webway. Yeah, interesting kind of thought to trace out.
Yeah, and it may not even be like a god itself, right? Like there are like primordial entities in mythology. There are entities that existed before gods or other creatures, or or is this like a real thing? And then you also got to, like, again, with serpent mythology, I'm not going to get into all the serpent mythology because, like I said, we'll be here for another hour. But
wait, let me tell you, Yogramunder.
Yogramunder.
Now I lost my train of thought. Serpent myths. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like in 40k too, you have another big serpent myth with the Void Dragon. Is there a connection there? Are we talking about a Void Dragon? Are we right?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I personally like the Webway theory.
Yeah.
That I just made myself.
Cool. So that's the pantheon. The last little bit that we're going to talk about before we do some call-ins is the Rhana Dandra, or the end times. The Rhana Dandra, the elder name for the final and fated clash with the forces of chaos, is a dark prophecy foretold in the ancient Asuriata. It speaks of a cataclysmic battle that will tear asunder both the materium and immaterium. A war so profound that it will herald the annihilation of the Eldar and the gods. This foretold struggle, shrouded in inevitability, will be the last of its kind, a conflict where existence itself is unmade. The Phoenix Lord Fugan, a figure of great destiny, is whispered to be the one who will gather his fellow Phoenix Lords for the ultimate confrontation. It is said that he will call upon them in the dying moments of the universe, standing as the last fall last to fall in the flames of battle. Phoenix Lord Baharoth, too, will meet his end in the final reckoning, his own death marking the irreversible closure of the tale. We just got a new Phoenix Lord model Fugan. Are we in the end times? Dun 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 dun. But even as the flames of prophecy flickered towards the inevitable conclusion, the Eldar hold another, more cryptic story, a story that dwells in the heart of the Black Library. There, resting upon the obsidian plinth, lies a crystal tome, bound in the chains of light. For eons it has remained sealed, its secrets hidden from the world. But with the unfolding of fateful events, the chains have begun to fade, one by one, until, at the opening of the Great Rift, the tome finally opens its pages. I haven't read this part yet, ever. And within the new tale was revealed, one far different than the one predicted in the Assyriata. It is said to be the great work of Cegorach, the laughing god, whose own hand had shaped this final jest. The prophecy had been altered, reshaped in the most unexpected of ways. Rather than the Rhana Dandra, this new vision spoke of Cegorach's ultimate trickery, an act so devious that it would deceive Slaanesh, forcing the Chaos Gods to expel all her vast energies in an attempt to save the Eldar. An act that would undo a very destruction she had intended. How such a remarkable reversal could come to pass remains shrouded in mystery. Son of a bitch! He wrote it down, but not in a language I can read. But the possibility of a new fate shaped by the wiles of the Laughing God offers a glimmer of hope, a hint that destiny might yet be rewritten. Yeah, what is that all about? The Black Library is crazy. We got to do an episode on it for sure, and the things in it and all that. Man, like maybe the Laughing God wrote about Ynnead. Maybe he knew that was come to happen. And it's kind of, is that really the fate that you want, Ynnead? Where you die and now get absorbed by this god as opposed to other gods? Is that the ultimate fate for the Eldar? Yeah, maybe that's what he wrote about. The Laughing God is, I saved you, but not really.
Yeah, that would be in line with something a trickster god might do. Your salvation is also like your undoing at the same time.
Yeah. Cool. Wow, killer episode, everyone. I think we're gonna jump to call-ins and discuss. Up first, we're gonna get Purge to stage, then Lucius. But first, hey, Purge, welcome to the show.
You never give me like any time to prepare. It's like, Purge, you're here. Okay.
I've been told that if there's dead air on the radio, I get shot. So I've tried not to get any dead air.
You can edit out the dead air.
Oh shit! You can edit these things?
Yeah, who would have thought?
Holy fuck! Why do I sound so stupid still then on every episode? Fuck.
I mean, that's the editor's problem, not mine.
Yeah. So, how'd you enjoy the Eldar mythology? Have you read a lot of this stuff before, or where do you kind of land?
I was new to it, but I'm a big fan of mythos in the first place.
Yeah. You were throwing a lot of stuff out in the chat there, Purge. Lots of good stuff. Yeah.
I've studied a lot of mythos. When I was in boot camp, every Sunday they'd send me to a room and just teach me a new religion. So I studied quite a bit of religions.
Nice. Yeah, like there's always something new you can learn, whether you put belief in it or not. There's still lessons, man, you can take from all of it.
I like the trickster god the most when we were talking about the gods, but that's more of a culture than anything else. And I think in some culture you see the trickster god as a good god, but in a lot of Western culture he's depicted as the bad guy.
I wonder why that is.
I think that's probably has a
like
lot to
maybe
do with.
Maybe it's just like we're all from like Western countries, and we kind of follow Western ideology, which is like usually Christian mythos, Judaism and whatever. And the trickster god would be like Satan and the snake and stuff. So we kind of put like, the snake tricked Eve into eating an apple, and you gain knowledge, but you also damned yourself essentially. So I wonder maybe if it's like that little bit that kind of bleeds into us, just kind of.
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, with my culture, it's a little different because we see it more as a like we call it Volas, or what you would call Loki, taught us what people call the dark arts because Thor or Perun would steal our cattle and women. So the only way we could defend ourselves was with the dark arts. But then
Okay.
that kind of goes more to what I was saying also is we didn't see him as a god. We saw him as a Siddhi, or what people call elves. So when people start talking about ancient gods, and even with this, because you guys brought up how like one of the swords was actually a ship. Generally, when people talk about ancient gods, I just think they were either precursor races or precursor humans that knew a cataclysm was going to happen, went into some kind of vault with a bunch of ancient or like super tech. Cataclysm happens, they come out of this vault with this super tech, and now everyone thinks they're gods because, oh, he's shooting this laser gun, but to them it's like, oh, it's shooting this magical beam at me.
Sure. Man, like for sure that could totally be a thing. You know, you listen to some podcasts and they just talk about how humans go back fucking hundreds of thousands of years now, we can confirm. And like, yeah, man, how'd they build the pyramids? They have some weird grav tech that we just haven't discovered. We went down the petrol path instead of the grav crystal path. And yeah, everyone down the line thinks it's like, who the fuck knows, man? But I like that kind of thought for sure.
Well, and even it kind of crops up in the Eldar story too. Like, was there a precursor race that these gods were that were looking out for them, and then they had their own little, mix up, and well, their mix up was what the Eldar called them War in Heaven, and like it's just this Elder race that's just like, no, this is the way that they should go. No, this is the way they should go. So they're just sitting there with fighting with each other, and it's like, well, these Eldar are like going with the cargo cults, like they're seeing these like spaceships and they're like, oh, that must be some like flying chariot that I've never seen before. That's got to be some godly being.
Yeah, and like maybe that's it too. Like the Elder themselves don't know what the heck these gods are, and like you kind of mentioned the cargo cults, just kind of were seeing stuff and putting stuff together on their own, and the Elder pantheon's like, that's not actually what we're about. But thanks.
But okay, yeah.
Well, who doesn't like a little bit of worship and adoration and being adored?
Yeah. Purge, you mentioned too the whole precursor race. That's also like a like in modern myth, I guess I would say, like Halo, for example, does that too, where you have like, I don't know if you're a fan of Halo or not, but yeah, you have Forerunners.
Was, but go on.
I'm in the same boat too, but yeah, same ideas though, like precursor races and like, the religious adopting of their technology and like arcs to save them from this cataclysm and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah, Master Cheeks ruined it all, but we won't go down that tangent.
That's for our other podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, precursor races, and the reason I mentioned Siddhi is because Siddhi were a real mythological race. It's just Tolkien adopted them into what we call elves nowadays. And a lot of people don't realize that there was people that actually believed in what we call Siddhi, or like goblins, like a red cap was another thing, like a goblin that would kill people and then soak his head in blood is how you got red caps. Or people had house goblins, like they would have goblins that would actually look after their houses, like Toby. Like this is all part of like Western lore prior to Christianity becoming the dominant religion.
Purge, where are you from? Do you mind if I ask? Like,
I'm American, but I come from a Bohemian household, or what most people know as gypsies.
Cool.
Something you said there too is interesting that it's reflected in 40K is like a lot of Eldar mythology. Again, we said like smashes together a lot of like pagan religions, and then this like dominance of Christianity is reflected in 40K, where you have these like pre-existing religions across these like older ancient races, and then you have the Imperium showing up, but again they're the equivalent of like the Catholic Church, right? The space Catholic Church coming in and like bulldozing those ancient religions. Like it's very reflective of that too.
I'm just building up over them on top of it. Like we find a lot of pagan sites are buried under like Christian monasteries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, then they would do that on purpose to sort of cleanse the area, right? That you built.
This is where you worship now.
Or even looking at certain Christian holidays that are based off pagan festivities.
Yeah, that's a whole rabbit trail I don't want to go down right now because I know there's
I will debate
whole
people.
back and forth.
Christmas
Yeah.
is not a pagan holiday. That is a myth, but I won't get into that.
Back on the Eldar Pantheon, Purge. Any other thoughts
Yep,
before we
yep.
get to the next guest?
I just kind of think it's cool that how Warhammer 40K just takes from all these different settings. So there's something for everybody, and it just brings it all together. Like, be it the mythos when it comes to the Eldar, or you got your space dwarves, or you got Conrad Cruz.
Oh, that's it. Boot this guy. He had his chance. He came and he said the unspeakable word, and now we don't get a Conrad Cruz episode for at least another 50. So well done,
Reset
Purge.
the
Well
clock.
done. Reset the clock. Lucius, are you ready? Give me a little nod if you're ready. Okay. Welcome to the show, Lucius.
Howdy.
Oh, his thing disconnected as soon as
Oh.
he did it to me. So that's how that feels. It's hurtful. I don't like it.
How dare you drag me into this, Mark?
Ow. Okay, well, if you can come back, Lucius, we'll happily have you back. But in the meantime, we'll get Fallen on the stage. Give me a nod if you're ready. Yeah, he's ready. Okay, hey, welcome to the show.
Oh, you're muted, bud.
We'll get there. In the meantime, I shall sing you the song of my people.
Might have to leave the show and come back in. That's happened a couple times.
Mark, I know you were joking about when Purge was mentioning Conrad Cruz, but he did bring up an interesting thing in the comments since we're just talking about mythology. Him with his visions and stuff being like Cassandra with her visions. And
I never thought the day would come, Christian, that when it was your final episode. But after,
now you can boot me right now.
yeah, but after that, it might be. Lucius, welcome back. Hey.
Now he is muted.
You're actually muted though, because we can see the little microphone on your thing. And he's gone.
Okay, well, this has to have been the worst call-in we've ever done. I'm not happy to say, but
I think there's a trickster god in our midst.
Yeah, god dang it. Okay, well, let's try one more quick second here and see if we can get anyone else on. Yeah, definitely maybe try leaving the stream and then coming back in, and I'll drop another invite link just to be safe. In the meantime, while waiting, we can do some end of the show readouts. Lorehammer Listener Lore podcast. One of my New Year's resolutions was to do a couple more episodes of that. So I'm trying to do Tuesdays and Thursdays. Come join me at Lorehammer Listener Lore podcast. I read your homebrew lore. Sometimes people read their homebrew lore to me, and I say, hey, that was pretty neat. I like the way you described that. It's a good time.
That exact phrase every time.
Every time, yeah.
Jacob is saying, I got glue on my finger and it's screwing my button.
You guys also do Star Lores?
Yeah. If you like me and Jordan and our incredibly bad takes on things, come listen to us talk about Star Wars.
Nice.
Yeah. Star Wars podcast.
All right, let's try to get Fallen back in here one more time. Hey, welcome to You Work Now.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we're live. Okay.
Yeah, we got it. How are we, boys?
Welcome. So let's start off with, have you heard of the Eldar kind of mythos before? Or was this kind of your first introduction to it?
A little bit. I mean, a little came through when I was reading the heresy books.
Sure.
And stuff, but not a whole lot. But I think the Laughing God's my favorite. But I'm liking Kurnous at the moment.
What do you like about him?
Just the whole thing in general. It's a little more fleshed out than a lot. And
Sure.
like more, how do I explain it? Just, I don't know. It just hits me.
It's a nice little love story of forbidden love, and there's like consequences to it and sacrifice to it. There's pain and suffering, and in the end, there's not even redemption because it's 40k. It just gets eaten by Slaanesh.
40k Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it worse than everybody dies.
But isn't that the best part?
Yeah, definitely pretty cool, Kurnous, and being like the actual father of the Eldar race and stuff, which Yeah.
Yeah, that bit I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we can chalk it up to a love baby between Kurnous and Isha. We don't know how they did it, but they did it.
A lot of alcohol.
Ah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, where do you kind of land on the mythologicalness of all this? Do you think they're Eldar gods, like actual warp entities? Do you think they're more old one related? What do you kind of land in this whole thing?
I think they're part of both, sort of thing. You know, like Eldar are a really old race that had ties with the old ones, and the warp has always been there, and sort of thing. So it has to like have sort of both.
Yeah, like for
Mhm.
all we know, like Asurion, Kurnous, and Isha, they were old ones. Like that, they reek of old ones to me, you know,
Yeah.
seeding, creating. But then the laughing god doesn't necessarily seem like an old one. That one seems more like a warp entity for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the Eldar created Slaanesh basically by themselves. So technically, does that make Slaanesh an Eldar god? You know what I mean?
Blasphemer.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll take it. Yeah.
I'll take it too. That's a hot take. Okay, well, I'll write a new portion of script for that.
Slaanesh,
newest
the
member of
Eldar
the-
goddess. Yeah. Fallen, how do you pronounce the trickster god's name? I want to get everyone's take on this. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Oh God, hang
Just
on.
say
let
it.
me look.
Like, just say it.
I
Say
don't
it.
even know how it's spelled.
I wish I got Purge to say it too.
I'll
'cause
drop
I
it in the chat.
If you
I
drop
wanna
it in
hear
the
it.
chat. Oh God, that's going to be horrible in Australian. Cegorach?
Cegorach. Do you do the C as a K
Cegorach?
or a C as an S? Cegorach? Cegorach?
Cegorach, yeah.
Cegorach?
Like heavy
Cegorach?
C.
I've already said as Cegorach, but that's just.
I mean,
Cegorach.
I'm seeing it as geocache, so, but that's just my dyslexia. Maybe I
Yeah.
need lessons with Trevor.
He's got,
Yeah,
he's got
yeah.
2 disabilities. He's got
Oh man.
CN.
Trevor's School for the
Australian.
Uneducated. Come join. It's a new Patreon tier.
Well, I've been paying for a long time, so yeah, I'll probably jump on that.
Probably. Cool. Any other thoughts, or we're gonna try Lucius one more time, Fallen? One more.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Conrad.
Get out of here.
Get out of here, you filthy heathen. All right, Lucius, let's try you one more time. Welcome.
Okay, is it actually working this time?
Yeah,
Yes.
we got you.
Good.
Perfect. I'm bad with tech.
We made it.
Well, I normally say Cegorach. I would say the spelling Cegorach, but I don't like how that sounds.
So I'm
just
not gonna
personal
say it.
preference. Yeah.
It's weird, but that's just how I'm feeling on it.
I think it's Irish. We got to get like an Irish listener to come in here and, or like a Gaelic speaker. Yeah. Pronounce it for us.
The other pantheon is always one of those ones to me. It's that perfect middle ground of explaining things, but still have so many questions and things that don't really make sense that it gives you a lot of room to talk about and think. GW has been bad with trying to explain too much, I think. Like, we need all the answers. No, just give us half of them. Leave us questions.
Yeah, like,
leave us things we
we
understand.
don't need to know that Ultramarine Sergeant's helmets are red because some dude in the fucking Horus Heresy painted his helmet red one time to honor his brother. We don't need those kind of minute details,
Yeah.
you know?
No, I think they still have that question about what they are, what exactly, because they kind of balance it a bit. Could be a lot of things, but none of them are established.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. They did a perfect job. Like, they could have wrote out a very functional mythos, you know, something that has no holes in it, is very established, but that is not what we're looking at here. And it just, yeah, it's so perfect. Like, what the fuck are all these gods, man? And even just talking to the last guest for a second, like, yeah, man, maybe they are all different creatures. You know, we just kind of lump them all together because even Ynnead is in the Eldar pantheon, but he's very different than all the others.
Yeah, it's a good one. Now I'm just thinking of what all options could they be. I'm not going down that route.
Yeah, sure. Do you have a favorite god?
I always lean towards blacksmith. Just any culture, any history, I always find it interesting. Vol seems really interesting there. I could see there still being a lot to do with Vol, but you guys brought up the point about not wanting to step on the other god's toes with doing like models or stuff based on Vol.
Sure. Yeah, like, you know, Vol can be worshipped in so many other ways too than having a tabletop model. Like, he's not necessarily the god of. He's not necessarily a warrior. Like, not all craftsmen are warriors. Some blacksmiths are just blacksmiths. They know how to make a sword, but they don't know how to swing one very well. Yeah, I you know, there's so many different like Eldar paths out there, like the path of the crafter, or even bone singers could like hold Vol as like kind of their patron kind of god. You know, and I like it more kind of behind the scenes like that, as opposed to being that tabletop front and center mini.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this episode or?
Nothing really. Just it's really good to see it cup. It's one of those things that fills in a lot of the background of all the Eldar, but you don't need it. So most people don't dig into it first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally like play and field an Eldar army and never know any of these stories or mythology or symbolism, right? You just like Guardians protect the craft world. That's all you need to know. Go play with them on the tabletop, right?
Yeah. It just, for me, man, every time I go to write a new episode, I'm just like, holy fuck. Even being in the hobby for 20 years, like, I haven't read so much stuff, man. I always learn something new. In 40K, there's always another little rock you can look under and learn something completely crazy. So, useless, but still fun to learn about. Cool.
Well, as a fellow new father, Mark, don't let Mira screaming convince you to cut B's hand off.
No, I won't. And thankfully, my daughter has been very good and not a lot of screaming. So no violence has been bestowed upon my family yet. Maybe when I get my first boy, I'll get a little more angry and violent, but let's hope not. All right. Sweet. Well, I think that's that. Thanks, Lucius, for joining. And I guess we'll just say goodbye to you two as well. Any other closing thoughts for you guys? Christoph, Jordan?
No, I just wanted to thank our new patrons who I don't think we thanked yet. Justin and James. Clap,
Ooh,
clap,
very
clap.
nice.
That's
yeah,
all
man.
I wanted to say.
Yeah, every couple days we get a couple more people. The Patreon membership is really growing. Like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, I've been thinking we're getting close to the point where I can start doing monthly contests with prize support on the Discord. So join up on the Patreon because that will be exclusive to only Patreon members. And yeah, we'll be able to have a lot of fun and kind of do some stuff with that. So join up and support the show in that way on Patreon. Cool. Well, that's that. How do you end a show like this? You say Conrad Kurz and call it a night.